Hi, I'm Neil Druckmann, creative director.
And I'm Troy Baker, I played Joel.
And I'm Ashley Johnson, and I play Ellie.
So first cinematic here, you'll see as we get to the end, I mean, this opening image, we wanted to match what we did at the end with image of Ellie.
Tommy, listen to me. He is the contract.
I think it's such an interesting thing to start off with, not only in the past, but also to start off basically.
Yeah, that's one of the things we were discussing as we're iterating on this opening sequence, because it used to be, it was all seen through Joel's eyes. But then it became a lot more interesting to think of it as you're seeing it through Sarah's eyes, because Sarah is really kind of, the whole game is about this relation between Joel and Ellie, but here Sarah is kind of embodies what their relationship is going to eventually become.
And that was probably one of the hardest roles to cast too, with Sarah.
Yeah.
There were a lot of people that came in, and I love that this scene was, you know, that was one of the audition scenes. And it was so amazing when Hannah came in that it just, I mean, what you're seeing right now, that was the chemistry, and she was amazing. It's like kind of like a younger Dakota Fanning. Just there's an old soul behind those eyes.
Yeah, and she could turn it on and off between each take.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, she was crazy. She's amazing.
It's always a little awkward, right? You have a 12-year-old someone on the set, and you're doing this pretty dark stuff.
Especially with the way that we work too.
All right, let's hold off on some of the jokes today, guys.
Good. You started helping out with the mortgage then.
Yeah, you wish.
And this piece of music, actually, we were struggling to find which piece to play here. And then Gustavo wrote this thing for the VGAs just to play before we showed the trailer. And right away I heard it, I was like, that's got to go in the opening. This is the theme kind of like the relationship between Joel and his daughter that later becomes the theme between Joel and Ellie.
Hallican Drops,
Pelican Drops.
the name of the band on her t-shirt. And where did you get that?
My daughter came up with that. My 2.5-year-old daughter named one of her dolls that. And we're searching for a name for a band. I'm like, I got a name for a band.
So this is going to be the first time that I've ever seen this scene. This was one specifically that I really didn't want to once we did it. And when we first talked about doing this, in the very, very beginning, I knew this scene was going to come. And I told you, I was like, give me a heads up when this day comes, because it's not going to be a good one.
Well, the thing with this scene, it's a super difficult scene to shoot. The first time we shot it, we did like at least 15 takes or something crazy like that. And then we thought we had it in the can. And
well, I thought.
Well, no, we all thought. We thought we came back to work and we started putting it in. And for me, there was just something that was, I felt like we could convey the same amount of emotion with less.
Yeah.
And it was a hard thing to tell Troy because everybody put so much into it. And it's like, we got to do it again.
Well, I remember that
we got to
day
come back to this.
when you came back and you told me that we have to do this again. Obviously, you'll see why what we're talking about. But this is the defining moment for Joel. This is where he draws that line in the sand, where he has few moral lines left to cross. I'm so amazed with how well Hannah did, and
yeah, I mean it was difficult to watch just on the mocap stage, and we actually had people after a few takes leave the set.
Yeah.
They're like, I can't watch this anymore, and they just took off. But from a story standpoint, it's so important to show just what the violence does and how it like rips apart this family.
Well, then especially a lot of times in video games, you see blatant violence, but when you personify it and you put it on a face, especially that young face, and you see the devastation that just one life lost can do, and it's just, I mean, this was such a hard day. It was such a hard day for both of us. I mean, it was exhausting for her. It was exhausting for me.
So the opening credits, the thing with the opening, initially we didn't want to do opening credits, didn't even have the idea for this, but the jump felt too sudden to go from Sarah dying to then 20 years later.
And making up.
We found that when people watch it in succession, they're not paying attention when we start introducing Tess in the world because they're still recovering from Sarah dying. So we're like, okay, well, let's have this opening sequence that can kind of help bridge the gap. And just had the idea of just seeing this time-lapse video of fungus growing, because so much of the disease and the outbreak is based on this cordyceps fungus that spread through spores. So we contacted a group at Sony San Diego who did this whole opening sequence for us, and they actually got these fungal kits where they grew fungus like in their bathrooms and filmed this over like days to produce this thing.
So everything you're seeing is actually it's real. It's not CG. It's not. It's all organic.
Yeah, except for the spores at the end, which are CG. Everything is real. This whole journey is like a dreamlike state, and you constantly see people waking up, and you see this multiple chime with Joel, and it's as if he's like remembering the past. He's always having these bad dreams throughout the game.
That was always something that we had to keep in mind when we did this scene, because we shot this before we shot Sarah dying scene. So it's kind of like we knew that those were going to be in one way or another kind of butted up against each other. But this is such a great thing. Again, this was in the audition thing that we did when we were trying to find Tess. And when Annie walked in, it was just like she walked in as Tess. We saw a lot of different people for that. And this was just such a great, because the relationship you see from going from Sarah and Joel to now Joel and Tess, it's just, I don't know, you see everything, like the house that he was in before was nicer. He looked nicer, and it's not just the years have passed, but those years that have passed haven't been
This also
kind.
gets into something interesting for me as a writer, which is you have a certain notion of characters or how you want the structure to be, and then once it's interpreted through actors like Troy, it changes. Like I've always imagined as Joel doesn't really care for Tess. He's completely shut down, and Troy treated it differently, which is I think he really cares for Tess, and even though he might not show it, and we just kind of embrace that. And you kind of see that later when Tess gets infected. That wasn't how the scene was originally envisioned, that Joel has such a reaction, but it became a lot more interesting to own that.
Well, and also how much this relationship changed over, time and different writing iterations and just conversations that we had about this. Even, within just in the last month or so, we've had conversations about this. It's like, what is their relationship? Because we never define it. I think anybody else would have put it on the nose, they're lovers or whatever. There was one note that you gave, it's like, let's, for one specific take, and it said, let's just assume that there was a fight last night over what, we don't know. This is that moment afterwards. So it was like this awkward tension between the two of us. But there's no like loving embrace, there's no kiss that Joel and Tess have. It's just such an interesting relationship.
And the challenge was to try to, how much can we convey just through nonverbal interaction?
Right.
Our first torture scene.
And it's with the lovely Robin Atkin Downs, which I was just joking and saying that it's not a Naughty Dog game if Robin isn't getting the shit kicked out of him.
He's been in every game since Uncharted 1.
We just put him through the ringer on this one. Poor guy.
It was important to show just how far Joel has come, from the father you see in the opening sequence to here is a man that is willing to torture someone to just get
But it's
what
so
is essentially
interesting.
money in this world.
Right, but it's interesting because he's not. He's like that brutal enforcer. It's kind of like that scene in LA Confidential where he's Russell Crowe. She's running the show. She's the dominating one, and I'm just brought in to be the
She's
muscle.
the brains of the operation.
Yeah, clearly.
Stop!
Quit your squirming.
That's all Robin's expressions too. It's so great. They did such a great job with the facial.
Yeah, it's important to note also all the facial is hand animated. We don't use any facial mocap. We find that we get better results with our animators.
And it almost becomes one-to-one. Yeah. It's just genius. Here it is. Wait for it.
Give me a week.
I might have done that if you hadn't tried to fucking kill me.
Vote of hesitation. It's gonna cost you.
I can't.
We re-edited that. We used to show the break, and actually it was less brutal than when we didn't show it.
When you didn't show it?
Yeah, when it's left to your imagination, it's a lot worse.
Yeah, but just you can see the way that his arm's positioned. But yeah, you're right. This is so revealing, not only about the relationship, but about, again, who Joel has become. To go from a father who just cares about keeping his nose down and keeping the job and playing by the rules, to being a guy who could just literally break some guy's arm over guns. It's just crazy.
Come on. Yeah, fuck those fireflies. Let's go get them.
She loved doing that scene too. Annie loved that. She tried not to smile every time. And I love it's just business as usual. It's back to it. It's like, all right, so now what?
And we're about to meet the very talented Merle Dandridge.
Ah, Merle. Now, here's something interesting about this. Again, going back to the audition, that process. We saw a bunch of different girls, even girls that we had originally seen for tests. We brought back to see.
And they're all really
Marlene.
good.
They're fantastic.
And then Merle came in and just.
And
there was no question.
And I wasn't there for that. And
Ashley can chime in.
Or no.
Ashley was part of the audition for Merle.
When she came in, it was hands down.
Yeah.
It's like, that's Marlene, come on.
It's funny that all three of us knew like right away that she needs to play Marlene.
But you said we ended up setting up a special thing just for her.
Yeah.
Because you're like, you've got to see her. I want you to see her.
Yeah, we had callbacks and she was busy. She couldn't make it. And we had a special day of callbacks just to bring her in because we felt really confident that she could do it.
'Cause I felt like she was the only one who didn't play it all either super tough.
Or street, yeah.
Yeah, she kind of had
she really straddled that line.
It was so great. But we did that first scene in the audition, literally first take, first scene. And she exits. It's at the very end of the game, and she turns around, she exits, and I turn around, look at Neil. I was like, I just mouthed, "Are you kidding me?" It's like,
and I mouthed, "I told you so."
Yeah, she did such a great job. This is another kind of thing that I think is interesting that's happening in video games, where we see two really strong women characters, female characters that aren't being over sexualized. They're just strong women.
Here we go. Ellie's introduction.
Yep.
And this stuff is all shot out of sequence. So it's I don't know, maybe you guys should talk about the process of how you get into that state.
I'm trying to remember that. I just really like the fact that the first time you see Ellie, you see her knife first.
Right.
I just think that's
You see that
kind
she's
of
a
awesome.
fighter.
Yeah. I forgot that was the first time that you saw Ellie. That was the first scene. That just from the get-go, she's fighting.
Yeah, and it's not just she's fighting because she really cares for Marlene. That was kind of the crux of this, is that you see these two characters really care for one another.
You're capable.
And I love in such a short time you see between Marlene and Ellie, there's this connection that's so important because that has to carry through to the end of the game when Marlene shows up again.
Well, even like just the positioning of the two people. I mean, it's Joel and Tess versus Ellie and Marlene.
And just like, it's so interesting watching, right, Joel here doesn't even make eye contact with her. He doesn't even acknowledge her existence.
Right.
She's not crossing to that part of town. I want Joel to watch over her.
Whoa, I don't think that's the best
Ellie.
idea.
Our first fight.
Here we go.
Bullshit!
I was close with his brother Tommy. Said if I was ever in a jam, I could rely on him.
Was that before or after he left?
Just reminding the player, like this guy you saw in the beginning, Joel's brother, he's changed too and he's been involved.
Yeah.
Just get hints of...
There's a falling out between the two of them.
And it's just, as you go on, you're starting to fill in that 20-year gap.
Just cargo, Joel.
No more talking.
Which is pretty true to your writing, too, because I'm like, so what happened here? It's always, what do you think?
What do you think happened there? Because I have no idea.
I don't have the time to write it.
Don't take long. And you, stay close.
For Joel, right, that's a hint. It's like, I don't want to be around this kid.
Right.
Because some subconscious part of him knows I could get hurt here.
Is it?
First moment alone.
What does Joel do?
Time for bed.
Takes a nap.
I'm tired.
What are you doing?
Killing time.
I do really like this scene.
Well, what am I supposed to do?
I am sure you will figure that out.
It's a great moment.
It's another one of those moments, too, where it's like, it just feels like Joel is just always exhausted. Like this world is just bearing down on him.
But I love that moment, too, where she points out the watch, where we get to establish that watch that...
Yeah, and that's something we didn't have in the beginning. That's actually something we inserted after the fact. Not for this scene, but there's another scene where we have that.
But I also love, like you said, the kind of the juxtaposition between Joel and Ellie, to where Joel's just, like you said, weary and exhausted, and you have this total opposite, almost antithetical thing of like this naivete and this childlike behavior that's wanting to explore. And
And
it
here
shows up in this.
she's talking about having bad dreams, like the idea that they're both carrying this baggage with them. And it's how they first connect.
Look how dark it is. Can't be any worse out there. Can it?
What on earth do the Fireflies want with you?
Hey. Sorry it took so long. Soldiers fucking everywhere.
How's Marlene?
What a great moment. He finally addresses her, finally connects on that level, and that moment's interrupted.
Well, it's also the first time kind of Ellie, if you think about it, opens up to him. She's saying, I'm scared, right? That was the subtext of that question.
That's true.
Go get some guns.
Don't do anything stupid.
Move.
Turn around, on your knees.
It's such an interesting thing that we're like 2 hours into the game, and we're still the enemy, if there is one, or just other humans, just other people that are on other sides of the law, but there's no infected, there's no clickers, there's no anything.
Look the other way. We can make this worth your while.
Shut up. Tired of this shit. What's the ETA?
Couple minutes.
I love the attention to detail, the rain falling off their faces. She's the one that strikes out first.
Then it's interesting how Joel instinctively, when a gun is pointed at Ellie, he acts.
Yeah.
Again, there's something subconscious that he feels like he has to protect this girl, even if he doesn't realize it yet.
Here it is.
Jesus Christ. Marlene set us up?
So this is starting to build up that conflict between Joel and Tess.
Yeah.
And this is something we struggle in the story for a long time, is like, how do we motivate this guy that shouldn't really want to do this mission? How do we get him to take on this mission to carry Ellie across the country? And it was through Tess. So if we get Tess to really buy into this thing, and then we, Tess gets infected, then she can convince Joel to take this on. At least initially, at least until we can spend long enough time with Ellie so they can connect.
Yeah.
And then it becomes about something else.
I'll also say, Ashley, when we were doing this, the way that you conveyed fear, because that's a very scary situation that you're in, because you felt like your back was against the wall.
Yeah, this is where this is where we kind of show you the difference between Joel and Tess.
Yeah, because you're starting to see Tess really kind of buy into this, and you see some hope.
Well, the thing I like about your performance here is you really get the sense of the conversation she's had with Marlene and the struggles she's been going through the past 3 weeks.
She said that they have their own little quarantine zone with doctors there still trying to find a cure.
It's where you see just deep inside how much Tess is desperate for any kind of redemption.
Whatever happened to me is the...
Remember, Ashley, we were talking about the scene and the idea that Ellie's not sure she believes in this thing. She feels this whole thing is insane and ridiculous.
I remember that.
I believe the direction I gave you was like, imagine you're giving yourself a compliment.
Yeah. If you as a person in real life found out you were the cure for mankind.
I'm kind of awesome.
Yeah,
apparently, so I am the Messiah.
In that 3 weeks, you wouldn't, it'd be hard to own that.
All right. Now watch your step as you're going out, because it's going to be a little...
Little brat.
I love the dynamics of this scene where it's like, Tess has this secret, right? She's bitten. She's not telling Joel or anybody yet. Joel here for the first, again, he's connected. He can't help it.
Oh, is that everything you hope
It's the first time he's like saying something semi-nice to Ellie.
But there's still this layer of cynicism behind it.
Can't deny that view.
Come on, this way.
He gets taken away by that childlike wonder. And this is something we added after the fact, the watch. The watch wasn't, we didn't have the watch at the time.
Yeah.
And Joel was just crossing his arms, and I asked the animator to like, oh, could you just flip his wrist and have him look at the watch?
Yeah.
This moment is reminding him of Sarah.
Yes, ma'am.
I love that it's almost a warning from Tess to Joel, like kind of like last words.
It's like this determination, and you're not sure why. What's
Yeah.
different now, Tess?
No. No, no, no.
Tess's desperation.
What happens now?
I love, like, and it totally comes across without many words or anything, just through the expressions on Joel's face, which is, I've put up with this long enough.
Right.
This is over. I've indulged you enough,
Where's this
Tess.
lab of theirs?
Oh, she never said. She only mentioned that it was someplace out west.
What are we doing here? This is
Yeah,
not.
that calm, pacifying, trying to talk some sense into you.
I know that you are smarter than this.
Really?
Right.
Guess what? We're shitty people, Joel. It's been that way for a long
I
time.
love the fact that her character,
It is over, Tess.
she knows she's going to die any minute, but she's still holding on to so much hope
Go
Yeah.
home.
I'm not
that, well, she's different.
going anywhere.
Right.
Look at her bite. The world could still change.
And it's kind of this theme that, like, this idea of, I've done all this crappy things, but it's all okay if I could do this one thing right.
Right.
And then that kind of moves over to Ellie. And we see that theme later when Ellie, like, talks about it can't be for nothing.
I got to point this out. Everybody else, because this was a part of the audition scene too, everyone else did that. Don't touch me. They screamed it out. And I love the way she did that, where it was like that first, don't touch me. And it's
Yeah.
just that realization. And I love the fact that Ellie's the one that figures it out, not Joel.
Oh, Christ.
And again, the back and forth Annie's doing between this freaking badass to such vulnerability and constantly jumping back and forth. And she brought that every take. We're all like, because every take she's like full on crying by the end of it.
She's incredible. You're right. She's such a badass, but she was so vulnerable at the same time. It's just such a,
Shows
Hard
two
thing to
sides of the
play.
same strength
You
too.
are. Look,
God, I'm such an Annie fan.
you have to feel some sort of obligation to me, so you get her to Tommy's.
I remember you coming out of a take, and Troy's like, look at me, he's like, you don't understand. You're not right there staring into her eyes.
I can buy you some time, but you have to run.
You want us to just leave you here?
Yes.
There's no way that.
This moment where, like, Joel's like in denial. It's like, there's something I could do. Not even understanding, like, she's gone. She's already gone. There's nothing you could do right now.
And also, she is just laser-eyed on Joel doing that, even though she's talking to Ellie.
No, just go. This fucking
Tess has to snap him out of it. It's like, you know that you have to do it.
Ellie.
And I believe this is the first time Joel refers to Ellie by her name. I don't think anywhere else in the game he does that. Beforehand. And again, it was important to stay. We stay with Tess, just showing. Here's her emotions finally coming through when Joel is gone. I like how I don't remember if we talked about this, but Ellie has just this clearly a problem with authority, where somebody's telling her what to do.
Yeah, for sure. I think that also, I have a problem with authority. So that came out a little bit in Ellie.
Tess, I don't even know.
Here's how this thing's gonna play out. You don't bring up Tess.
Yeah, that's so. Joel knows what he needs to do to survive, which is just let go. Needs to let go fast of these things, or they will kill you.
Don't tell anybody about your condition. They
That's
think you're
great.
crazy little
I love that he refers to
And lastly, you do
that as her
Condition.
what I say.
You can barely acknowledge. Just
We're
he's still
trying to search for the term for it. You being the whole cure for humanity thing.
Good.
I love that he
Close
says
enough.
good, but the subtext is clearly like, all right, good enough.
Yeah.
That's all I'm gonna get out of this kid.
Good chance he could get us a car.
Okay.
Let's get a move on.
Hey, it's Bill.
Lovely Earl Brown.
Whoop whoop.
I remember you were kind of geeking out when you auditioned with him.
I was. We saw like a lot of people for Bill, and there was a lot of like stars that came in. I was really surprised. Like, but then when he walked in, I was like, holy crap, it's Dan Dougherty from Deadwood.
He's amazing to work with. I've worked with him before a while ago, and I just love working with him.
You actually hit him in this scene in the face.
That's right.
I did.
Right there. And we kept it. And he kept going. What a trooper.
That's one of my favorite things, is when he goes, am I dead?
He was sick that day.
Yeah.
He was like getting over a cold.
I did hit him, and I felt so bad because it was a complete accident. I think I didn't realize my swing was going a lot faster than I thought it was.
Of many people that you hit during the shoot of this project.
Yeah.
Getting into
happens.
character. Well, I also love this business that he's doing here, too. That was something that he completely made up. He's like, working on the sword. And
I love this.
I need you to shut up.
Again, I love this moment, this paternal thing. Like, just shut up, kid. I need to handle this.
He's always a dad.
Actually, Bill, they are.
Well, it don't matter because I don't have a car that works.
But there is one in this town.
Parts. There are parts in this town.
Meaning that you could fix one up.
All right.
it gives in.
And I love just taking that time, take that pause.
All right. It's on the other side of town. Now you help me go gather it, and maybe I can put something together that runs. But after this, I owe you nothing.
That's fine. A couple of days from now, we'll probably be dead anyway.
And it's like opening handcuffs, but again, I see it as this almost tender moment between Joel and Ellie.
Stay right on my ass.
Can't miss it.
Another great Ellie line. Smart ass.
Remember the rehearsal for all these scenes? So we would shoot these things in chunks. So we'd bring like Earl in and Ashley and Troy and just we're going to shoot the whole Bill sequence. And talking to Bill, and he's about to talk about a partner that he's had. We've talked, there was a question I brought up, is like, what kind of partner is this? And Earl asked, is Bill gay? And I said, well, he could be. I mean, it's really up to you.
Well, no, you gave the standard response of,
what do you think? Because I really want him to own it. I thought he was when I wrote the part, but I really wanted the actor to own it, and he did. I mean, he made that decision to make him a gay character. And again, it's not something we ever explicitly say, except for the magazine that Ellie steals.
Right. But again, instead of making that a point and something, it's just a cute little piece of exposition.
Let me tell you a story.
Well, and from a narrative structural standpoint, what Bill is there to show is, here's what happens when you survive on your own in this world. It's like you're alone and miserable and a little bit crazy, and it's what could happen to Joel if he keeps going down this path of just doing whatever he takes to survive.
So you know what I did? Wisen the fuck up.
And also, Bill is there to kind of give Joel the warning, is like, you go down this world, you care for people, you will get hurt.
Hey! What'd I say to you when we walked down the steps?
And that's where Ellie has stolen a bunch of Bill's stuff.
I love that flips him off.
God damn it. You keep babysitting long enough and eventually...
I love that line of fixing the stupid pile. Because I feel like that's so something a kid would say when you're trying to cover, when you're it's
Right.
nothing specific.
I was just stealing all your stuff.
Fix the pencils over here.
Oh, this is the one where we abused Troy. I was like, you have to fly face first into the ground. And he's like, but I should roll. No, fly face first into the ground.
Yeah. It was like, well, if I roll this way, then actually, they're like, it looks too ninja. We can't do it. So I literally just had to eat shit time after time again. It's like seeing stars. It was great.
Please tell me you're done!
Yeah, you guys are acting against nothing. There's nothing there.
And something we always had to remember was bring the tension back.
Love too that he closes a glass door like that's going to do much.
Yeah, right?
So that worked out well.
Oh, the thing I love here is that, well, that Bill constantly brings up Tess, not knowing that
Right.
Tess is dead because Joel doesn't want to talk about it.
Right.
But here it gets to Joel. And this is something that you guys actually just improvised. That wasn't in the script, this big fight that happens here. It was much more low-key in the script.
Yeah, once he brings up Tess, that was something we kind of keyed in on.
Jesus. What, you know this guy or something?
Frank.
Who the hell's Frank?
He was my partner.
They're both kind of lying to each other. If you think about the previous scene, right? He mentioned this partner, but almost like I didn't care about him. I let him go, and you realize that's not the truth at all. He
Right.
really cared for this guy, and this guy probably left him.
Right.
Yeah.
He's got
I love how clinical he is about this.
here.
With that look on his face says everything.
Well, that turn too that Earl did with, he realizes Joel's looking at him and he's being vulnerable right now, and he puts the mask back on.
Yeah.
And I remember like seeing that moment from Earl. I was like, yeah, we cast the right guy.
Well, fuck him.
And then that turn right there. Which again is kind of why Bill, what purpose Bill serves in the story, is to show that having those moments of emotion, there's nothing he feels, there's nothing but weakness.
Get out. Get out.
I love it.
That relationship between the two of you
I
was
love
so
it.
good. That's what was great about the cast, is constantly having to switch from these really serious, dramatic vulnerabilities to playing tough, right? Because that's what you kind of have to do in this world, is let your humanity come out, but then learn when to shut that off to survive. And also, you're seeing, it's very subtle here, but you're starting to see this change in Joel, where he's given Ellie more and more responsibility. He's trusting her. Instead of just saying, stay out of my way, he's like,
Right.
I need your help.
This is a good point that, in case people weren't aware of the process. I mean, everyone at this stage, we had such great sets, even though it's kind of rudimentary, but they actually built a truck for us, and we used that truck so many times. But I think this was the last scene that we shot with Earl.
Yeah, and rehearsal, that I would try to give you guys as much of concept art and videos that we had,
Right.
so you can imagine the space, because you have nothing there to act off of, except each other.
That's right.
You guys have each other.
It's true.
And I love this exchange between Bill and Joel too, because it's Joel trying to kind of apologize for an awkward situation and trying to show some sensitivity to him, and Bill just completely glosses over it. And
The thing with Joel that I kind of admire, like, he can't come up with the right words. He can never come up with the right words. I was like, it's like a half sentence. He's like, so, yeah.
and Bill kind of finishes that for him, but it's
Which really helps my writing. This theme comes in here because to show Joel's now alone with Ellie, but the relationship has changed. This is starting to become that theme we heard in the beginning with Sarah. Now we're getting into the first scene we ever shot, and this is your guys' edition right here.
yeah.
Yeah, this was the first audition scene when I came in,
Okay.
when I read for you guys, along with another scene that I don't know if it's in the game or it
It's not in the
probably
game.
changed a little
It's
bit.
like the scene with the Walkman.
Yeah, the scene with the Walkman.
There's a scene. There was the scene kind of like it, but it's pretty different.
Back at Bill's. I mean, all this stuff was just lying there.
What else did you get?
Well, and I especially love this because, especially at this point, we had no idea
Here.
who Bill really was.
That is actually before my...
How many times did we come back to this scene? Like at least 3 times.
Yeah, at least 3 times. I love what she says. I was like, hey, you know who this is? And the different versions of songs that we ran through with this too is great.
I'm sure your friend will be missing this tonight.
That's the guy on the cover is John Sweeney, one of our concept artists.
That's awesome.
How the hell would he even want
Is the centerfold also his penis?
We should have that unlockable. You could see what she's looking at.
Yeah. Get your subscription to Bearskin Magazine today.
I'm just fucking with you.
And the awkwardness of that moment.
But it's also such a great moment of levity between the two of them.
I don't know, that's kind of a way of her complimenting him or trying to bond with him.
Yeah.
And it's something I was very conscious of when like writing this stuff. It was like, this is making me uncomfortable here on the page. I have to leave it as is.
Yeah. That's your litmus test.
I'm tired.
I love that. Not even tired. Cut to passed out. This is the first scene, because it was part of that reveal trailer. It's the first scene that I ever saw put together fully, and I was just absolutely blown away how good it looked. It was the first time I'd actually seen, real flesh and bone put on Joel and Ellie.
And the yawn we added after the fact.
I remember
Yeah.
Because
that.
we were like, oh, she doesn't have a yawn. She should have a yawn when she wakes up. And then you were yawning on the set, and we're all yawning because it's contagious.
I know, just watching that, I just yawned. I tried to be quiet about it.
I love that this moment of silence and kind of peacefulness is broken up by this.
Are we gonna help?
So Joel knows this trick.
What about the guy?
He knows it because he's done this before.
Right. Poor John Bentley. And I love, again, how that music is playing not as a score, but coming from the car. It's just great.
I believe that was Ruben that we hit and
Yeah,
had
that
him
was
fly,
Ruben.
fly off the truck like that. This was also the first really dramatic scene we shot, and it became kind of the touchstone for how the characters should look when they're
I feel sick.
really pushed.
It's so interesting when she's, again, it's this moment of vulnerability when she says, I feel sick, and Joel's,
Glad I didn't, right?
again, being very didactic and pushing her away.
Goddamn kid.
She stands up for herself. This is the first time she stood up for herself.
How about, hey, Ellie, I know it wasn't easy, but it was either him or me.
And I love that line,
For saving my ass.
it's either him or me.
Anything like that
Come
for
back
me,
to that.
Joel?
And he can't do it. He can't admit that she saved his life.
Lead the way.
So this is, in the story, the first time Joel really is trusting Ellie and seeing her as pretty much an equal to him. He has to rely on her to survive in this world.
This is
Survive
one of the
this journey.
first cinematics that we saw too, and we just
Yeah.
it's still one of our favorites. We keep coming back to it and laughing because I love this exchange between the two of
What
them.
about me?
You stay here.
This is so stupid. We'd have more of a fucking chance if you let me help.
I am. You seem to know your way around a gun. You reckon you can handle that?
Well, I sort of shot a rifle before.
He's like, shit, rats, that's it? Fuck.
BBs.
That line. Oh shit! Here's what we got to work with.
We usually avoid these kind of cameras that rotate around something that are trying to do too much, but it felt like this moment kind of needed it.
Yeah, I love
It's
it.
a weird parent-kid moment.
Yeah.
As soon as you fire,
He's teaching her how to shoot to kill.
Get another round in there quick. Listen to me. If I get into trouble,
There's a really nice,
every
when I watched like Ellie's performance, this balance between she's trying to be a hard ass, but you could see in her eyes she's kind of terrified of the situation.
Yeah.
But even in this, there's almost a little bit of excitement there too. Either whether it's about the reality of her killing isn't real, or if it's just I have an opportunity to make Joel proud.
Opening up.
You're welcome.
Such an interesting look on your face here, because it's almost like I did good, but then you feel horrified by it. So interesting.
It's like, even though Ellie's used to killing, used to seeing this stuff in this world, it was still important to show this is having an effect on her.
Right.
And you're going to see that kind of carry throughout the game.
Well, it also kind of carries over into this moment as well, too, because I realized what I just put her through. I love the way that, we took that away from her. It's like almost gingerly. It's like, give me that.
It's like, you can't really compliment it because...
Right. You did
just what
good.
you
Yeah,
had-
there's no
yeah.
pat on the back. But then I turn around and I give her this, and it's like you said, there's a sadness to it.
Yeah. It's sad that in this world, these are the things that you have to bond over. Like, here's your gun.
And that's the reward.
Yeah.
But that nod of understanding is great.
Brandon and Najee.
There you go.
Yep.
Brandon, I think, had the hardest audition of anyone.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because I literally almost took off his head. Not in this scene, not punching him. That fortunately was done by Ruben Langdon, who can punch way better than I can.
Leave him alone.
Najee, too, when he came in red for Sam, that had that...
It's all right. They're not the bad guys. Lower the...
Just this kid that's kind of terrified to live in this world.
Yeah.
Man, you hit hard.
Yeah, well, I was trying to kill you.
And these two characters are really showing... They're kind of a mirror of Joel and Ellie's relationship.
If you haven't noticed, they don't keep kids.
And it's another warning for Joel, like this whole arc for Henry and Sam of what's going to happen if you stick with this girl. You're going to go through what these two characters are going to eventually end up.
I do like that Sam is a character that seems genuinely scared, because a lot of the other characters can tend to be a little bit more badassy.
Right.
And he's young and he's scared. And I love that.
To me, he also comes across very sullen. Like
Yeah.
there's like just a little glimmer of hope and joy, but it's almost like anytime there is a moment of that, then Henry kind of takes that away from him.
It also gives Ellie an opportunity to play a mentor of sorts for him.
Yeah.
Be safer if we chat there.
All right, take us there.
Welcome to my office.
One thing that I think made Brandon such a great choice for this, and the right choice for this, is this scene about how much he owned it and the pride that he had in showing off this wonderful camp that they had made for themselves, and kind of like trying to impress Joel, and Joel just come, very nonplussed about the whole thing. He's like, "Oh, good for you. Yeah, you've done this."
And relax. We're safe.
Well, the interesting thing, the way I read it is like Joel is impressed, but he's not. He's trying not to show it. He's trying to still test this kid. But there's a lot of he sees himself in Henry.
Yeah. Very, very much so. This is, I remember we going back and forth about this because...
Oh, yeah, because layout changed. Because initially they were going to go through the camp at night, and then we had to change the layout, so we had to go in and re-record these lines.
Well, there's something on the reverse that it doesn't really matter, but when we shot this, the entire time that he was laying out this plan, I was just looking at him. Because I was like, I really care about your plan, kid. I care more about you. It's kind of like poker. You don't play the cards, you play the man.
Again, one of those fleeting moments where kids can be kids.
She doesn't seem bothered by all this.
Such a powerful line. And Joel completely just dismisses it. You guys were actually doing that in the background while we were doing this scene. This was so great. It wasn't like shot separately.
I know, we were just fooling around. You guys like, shut up.
It just seems like there's a lot of people putting their stock on the Fireflies these days.
Yeah, maybe there's a reason for that.
So you don't know.
I love this standoff, even though it's a sit-off almost between the two of them, where Joel's just pushing him for information just to see where this kid's grounded.
Easy.
That nod.
Yeah, the threat being so subtle, but it's there.
Yeah. And it's the other thing, again, that Brandon did with this that everybody else didn't do. They kind of really got in Joel's face, and he didn't. He didn't posture himself that much. It was just like, I'll take care of mine, you take care of yours. And also that he doesn't correct him about your daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Joel doesn't correct him. He's not, she's not my daughter.
You and your girl, you want to join us. It goes down tonight.
I guess we best rest up then.
And I guess that's the most Joel's going to give him.
Yeah. That's all Henry needs. Joel sleeping again. These were my favorite scenes where I just got to sleep.
No, we're going to be moving fast, okay?
And the idea of these two pairs that are coming together.
And they're such great brothers. Brandon and Najee did such a great job together.
How many bullets do you have left?
I just remember it was funny because jumping off of this bridge, there's just
A rope?
a line of tape, and then you have to jump off of it.
Because we were both stepping over it at first. They're like, no, this is like 50 feet down.
I was like, so we got to do a whole thing.
It looks ridiculous when we're doing it. It's like, with our arms above our head.
I know.
I know.
I know.
And this part where you're in the water, we had you on a cart.
That's right. And they
And
were
we
like
just pushed
wheeling
you
around.
across
Yeah.
mocap stage.
It was actually pretty violent being on that.
It was.
It was pretty scary. This was part of the audition scene that Brandon did that really just kind of helped us realize we had the right Henry.
He's awake.
Hey, you.
Back to the salesman. It's like, hey, buddy, everything's okay.
I
Everything's
know.
all right.
I really like that about his character, that he's kind of a salesman.
You know, Sam's the one who spotted you. You guys are taking quite a bit of water. What's wrong? Henry! Get back, hey. He's pissed, but he's not gonna do anything.
You sure about that?
Stop!
He's confident. He knows he can calm you down, but he needs Sam to stay out of the way.
Right, just in case.
Yeah.
Chance of making it, and you did. But coming back for you meant putting him at risk. Stay back.
I think there's already the change there. Joel knows it's true.
Yeah.
Joel wouldn't have come back for him.
I saved you.
And even when we were shooting this too, I mean, that's you really get into that moment, and every time that I felt that hand on my shoulder, it's almost like that Hulk moment where you realize, oh, I felt bad for letting you see that part of me, because so far I really haven't, in these moments, let that demon out. I've done what I've had to do, but this is just cold-blooded murder I'm about to do.
The thing with Henry, which Brandon really brought to it, which is making light of everything for Sam. Everything is done for Sam.
Right.
I think he really is intimidated. He is scared of the situation, but he's making light of it so Sam isn't as scared as he is.
Because the second that Sam sees that he's scared, Sam will be scared. Silver lining kid.
You're gonna be really happy you didn't kill me.
This is the longest
Short
cinematic
scene.
in the game. I had to fit that in there. Quit this place from this, since we had it in the first trailer.
I can't quit you.
I remember when we first, the very, very beginning of this, when we like did the first table read through this and everything, and we talked about, I asked if there was going to be a moment of just a light shining through in this darkness, and you talked about this scene, and at that point it was just really kind of just real easy brushstrokes of what it was going to be, and it really came into fruition and became this
Well, all the characters here have their guard down. It's kind of unique, because usually somebody's lying or somebody's hiding something.
Right.
And here's like, everybody has their guard down.
they're just talking about motorcycles.
You two deserve a little privacy.
And you were really giving too on this. We spent a lot of time on this, and there was this one scene where you just kind of let me ramble about you know, to where we really feel like we're coming midway into a conversation. I don't remember what was said, but it was just this cool moment.
But you went more into the details of like with Tommy and where you went and the States and all that stuff. I think that really helped kind of make this, the following takes much more natural.
Right, without all the rest of that stuff, the preamble being there. But I love the turn that he gives right here. It's like the kids have gone to bed now, and we can just talk like adults.
Worst part about it all.
Animation and lighting, right? If you don't capture these looks in the eyes, this scene doesn't work.
Right. The thing that I love about this is that he's set up a little office for himself, kind of like what Henry did. You know, it's this, I'm being official, trying to be a grown-up. But he's still a kid, and we see it in this moment.
I really enjoyed working with Brandon and Najee. Just having them on set was so much fun. They're such
Najee
good
especially,
dudes.
like
Najee's
a trip.
hilarious.
we're doing this crazy scene and we like cut, and then he's like just starting dancing or
Yeah.
Singing whatever, YouTube hot song at the moment.
Yeah.
Song bombing us all day.
They were so much fun. I just adore them too.
Is everything all right?
You got an opportunity to put so much of you into Ellie.
That's just because I can't write, so I just listen to Ashley talk and then like, oh, that's a good line.
Have a good night.
That's giving me way too much credit.
How is it that you're never scared?
It's
Who
like
says that I'm not?
putting up the defense, making joke of it, as Ellie does.
Yeah.
And then seeing when she needs to, because that's the only way she's going to cheer him up. She's going to open up to him.
And also, she kind of throws out that bone, like, scorpions are pretty creepy. That's not what I want to talk about.
Being by myself.
Which again, all this stuff she's saying here plays into what happens later when she finds out Joel's trying to give her up, giving her away to Tommy.
Yeah.
Those things out there. What if the
And it's
people
kind of the
who
same
live
thing we're
so-
seeing with Tess,
What if they're trapped
to
in
where
there
she
and they
was,
control their body?
again, she knows what's going on, he knows what's going on, but it's looking externally for some kind of either comfort or hope or answer or something.
First of all, we're a team now.
And then they just
We're gonna help
always
each
come
other
up
out.
empty.
Second,
I guess one thing I'm just thinking about now, which is all the stuff Sam is going through because he's bitten,
is not
is probably the stuff Ellie went through when she was first bitten because she thought she was going to turn.
He says that they've moved
And it
on,
just happens that
that
she
they
was
were
immune. But
family.
so that's what she kind of,
Do you think that's true?
all these realizations she's had.
I go back and forth. I mean, I'd like to believe it.
That's a powerful thing for essentially
It's kind of
kid to
sad because
say.
that's not what Sam wants to hear. He
Right.
wants to
Yeah.
hear that it's all going to be all right.
Right.
But she doesn't realize that's what
No,
he
death is terrible. It's a horrible, painful process, and you're all alone. You know.
I almost forgot. There. If he doesn't know about it, he can't take it away. All right.
This did make me sad because,
I'll see you tomorrow.
you know, he spent that whole night alone.
Mhm.
Like,
Oh
You know.
yeah.
Henry didn't go back in there.
I let him sleep in, just like
Yeah, let him sleep in.
Oh,
And that was the last conversation he had. And that always made me so sad after I read that because I was like, oh.
yeah. I didn't even think about that. And what would have happened if Henry had gone in there? I mean, the fact that
Smells good.
that Henry wasn't there, I mean, plays into the culmination of this scene where he's just racked with guilt.
I mean, one thing we're very conscious of when putting the story together is we would have these really kind of dramatic moments that change the characters significantly, and then we would cut to some more time in the future.
Yeah.
And so you don't get to see right afterwards what happened to it, and then you get hints of how this affected the relationship, which is what you get into the next gameplay sequence. And this whole thing is, it's a huge change in Joel here, because now he sees, this is what's going to happen to me. The same thing that's happening to Henry right now is what would happen to me if I'm going to keep going and let Ellie get hurt.
Yeah.
And it's like, after this moment, he makes the choice, like, I need to give her to Tommy.
Oh my god.
Sam?
Oh no.
I have no idea what that would do to a person to actually see that, to have to do that.
Ellie, stay there.
And I remember talking with Brandon about this when he's saying it's all your fault. He's not talking to Joel, he's talking to himself.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, easy.
Yeah, the thing that's cool with this piece, Gustavo's music, is that you're carrying that weight. You're carrying the weight of that emotion of everything just happened onto the next scene, which even though they might not be thinking about Henry and Sam right this moment, but it's just that feeling is lingering going forward.
I own that shirt.
I'm pretty
I
sure
still think
am.
we should sell off our mocap suits for charity.
Unwashed.
Jeffrey Pierce,
Do as the lady says.
Ashley Scott. Sorry, Ashley Hart.
Oh, yes.
Ashley Hart. She was married.
Oh, we didn't know the place was occupied. We're just trying to make our way through.
Through to where?
They're all right.
But you know these people?
Know him. He's my
The
goddamn brother.
chemistry was so good between
The two of
you
them.
and Jeffrey.
It was amazing how well, and I mean, Jeffrey's just a few years older than me, but it was interesting playing the older brother to him. And yeah, we felt like brothers immediately. It was crazy.
Oh, well, Jeffrey came, I mean, we almost cast Jeffrey
Yeah.
as Joel.
Be nice to
And then once, like, months later, we needed to cast Tommy. I was like, oh,
Well.
what's Jeffrey Pierce doing? That's pretty-
Thanks for not blowing my head off.
Would have been embarrassing, considering you're my brother-in-law.
And Ashley Scott, she came really close to being cast as Tess. And
Yeah.
when we needed Maria, I was like, oh,
We
Ashley
got the
Scott.
perfect person.
There were no auditions for these roles.
I love this awkward setup of this is how he meets his sister-in-law. How he meets
Yeah.
Jeffrey's, or Tommy's wife.
Story.
Why don't we bring him inside?
And you just get to see here now how Ellie's starting to become more secretive.
Well, also, it's
Guarded.
like the way they're standing and everything, it's like Ellie's kind of alone now. Like now it's like Joel is with Tommy and
There's no one familiar with Ellie.
It's quite the crew you got here.
They're good men. This place gives them a second
The
chance.
theme of redemption.
Gives us all a second chance. So why'd you leave Boston?
We went through this so many times,
I've been on quite the adventure.
and each one of them I thought was great in its own little version. It was just kind of like trying to pick the right one. But this is where you get to see.
Well, Joel's putting up a front here. I mean, he's trying to.
He's pitching his little brother.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to see them slip, how they're two different men, but they instantly go back into those roles that they were before.
And just by the behavior here, you get hints of what happened in those 20 years.
Right.
How dark things went.
Why bring her here?
Supposed to deliver to the fire.
Like they're playing nice.
Right, they were happy to see each other, but now it's like,
It's
oh,
right
right,
underneath the
you
surface.
haven't changed.
You know where they are. Now, I'm not asking for.
And that's so true to life. Like, especially with brothers, you go back to that. I push these buttons and you do this.
This isn't for me, Tommy. This is for your damn cause.
My cause is my family.
And I loved, what Jeffrey was doing posture-wise,
Jesus, boy.
putting Joel on the offensive.
And now he's just like insulting everybody here and insulting his wife.
Tommy, I need this.
Again, just Joel just expects. I tell my little brother to do something, he needs to do it.
Right.
But I ain't taking that
Which
girl
is
off
totally
my hands.
based on my brother.
This is how you gonna repay me, huh?
Repay you.
For all those goddamn years I took care of us.
Took care. That's what you call it? I got nothing but nightmares from those years.
You survived because of me.
It wasn't worth it.
Tommy here, Tommy and Maria show that even in this world is horrible, you could find peace in it.
Right.
You could build a community. You don't have to resort to these things that Joel has.
That line was a great thing that Jeffrey improv'd on. Put your hands on me again. It's a good Southern phrase.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Joel! Oh man, they were coming in from every direction. Then Maria was like, "We gotta run."
That's where you see Tommy realizes for the first time that Joel really cares for this girl. This isn't just a job. And that's where he has that change, and he's like, oh, crap.
I need to talk to you.
This is why he's asking me to do this.
Absolutely not. You tell him to go find somebody else.
And again, it's just such a real moment between a married couple. It's like
What's that all about?
honor and doing something for selfishness and everything else that doesn't play in this world anymore. Those are archaic ideals.
Tell you where the lab is?
I don't want you to go out there because you're going to get killed, and we don't owe him anything. Because I'm sure all she knows is the 20-year-old Joel, 20-year-old version of Joel.
Right.
Why would you risk your life for that guy? You hate him, essentially.
One fuck up and then I turn into one of those widows, okay?
And for Ellie, it's important to show that she could just read Joel. She has this bullshit detector that, just by the way he's answering her questions, she understands exactly what he asked Tommy to do.
Maria.
Here we go. Love this moment. Here we go.
If anything at all happens to him, it's on you.
The posture and everything. He knows he's in the wrong. He knows he can't ask Tommy to do this.
Yeah.
She's thankful, you know.
Yeah, I know.
I'll take that girl of yours to the Fireflies. You don't have to worry about it.
He really cares for you.
It's best this way.
There's so much more behind it, though, than just care. It's Tommy showing that he's the bigger man, that he's the better man. He's allowing his brother to be shallow and selfish.
I think he knows what his brother's been through. And he knows why he can't go through that again.
Which way? Come on.
This is probably my favorite scene.
What a long day this was.
About boys, movies, deciding which.
I honestly think this is one of the best scenes that you wrote, Neil.
It's bizarre.
Get up.
Because it says so much about this world,
I
and
say no.
especially Ellie, where she's at, and realizing how different and how much of a chasm there is between this world and that.
I agree.
Goddamn stupid.
Well, I guess we're both disappointed with each other then.
What do you want?
I think I really like about this scene is that
Rid of me the whole time.
they're both kind of, I guess, being selfish in a way.
Oh
and yet it's coming from a place because they really care about each other. Like, they don't understand that they both have been through horrible things, and they each think what they've been through has been worse.
I love that she calls him out on that. What are you so afraid of?
How many close calls have we had?
Well, we seem to be doing all right so far.
And now you'll be doing even better with Tommy.
Not her, you know.
What?
And it's like the stakes are high, and it's like, okay, well, then I'm going to drop this bomb. I'm not her.
Mighty thin ice here.
It's like, how many years has it probably been for Joel since he even, like,
Don't
thought about it, mentioned it?
You have no idea what loss is.
I think Joel's thought of that name every day, but I don't think he's heard it said. That shove that you gave, that was nowhere in the script.
I think that came out of frustration, definitely, because when we had come back and we couldn't find it, and I wasn't necessarily frustrated with you, I was frustrated with us in the scene, and I was like, oh, fuck.
It's so cold of Joel to do this, and I've had people on the team ask me to remove this part, that he's being too cold, and I'm like, no, it's like, because she's being so vulnerable and he's having these feelings, he's trying to shut it down. That's why he's being so cold. It was so important for me to keep that in there.
When he says, "You're not my daughter," it's almost an insult.
And it's kind of the opposite of what he's feeling.
This scene was such a great opportunity to show even just like all these mini arcs with characters. You know, we don't have a lot of time, and we're not gonna. We can only tell Joel and Ellie's story. We can't go into such detail with Bill and Tommy and Tess and Marlene. But you get this great resolution between these brothers because you get the full arc of it in just a short amount of time.
It's like the way I approached it is the seed has been planted. Like when she says, I'll just be more scared, that Joel just needs time. And in time, he will change his mind because he doesn't want any, deep down, he doesn't want anything that will hurt Ellie or. So over there, the idea is just this little horse riding montages. That change is brewing. And Gustavo's music doesn't hurt.
What's so great about how this plays out is there's really nothing happening but just this passage of time.
That used to be a level that you played through. And just during production cuts, we changed it. So it actually worked out better. It just became this idyllic idea that you never fully reach. You just see it from the outside.
Where is this lab of theirs? It's all the way out, University of Eastern Colorado.
Pointing out this moment that there was probably a time when these two used to watch college football together, you know, and calling out. He's like, hey, go Bighorns, you know. For our college that we made up. I want one of their t-shirts so bad, University East Colorado. Because Colorado is such a big state.
I don't want her coming after me.
Sorry for stealing your horse.
Well, come back to town. Let's discuss it at least.
You know me, my mind's all made up. University, Eastern Colorado. How do I find this lab?
It's in the science building. Looks like a giant mirror. You can't miss it.
And the idea of offering Joel a place of refuge, a place of redemption.
Well, and originally we had some, I think there was a line that I threw in there or something. It was like maybe someday or something. It was just too on the nose. And we ended up saying we don't need that.
Yeah.
It just needs to be
the look is enough.
Well, and the offer to me is enough.
Mm-hmm. We're about to hear Steve Bloom.
Lovely Steve. Silk-throated Steve Bloom.
You're looking for the Fireflies. They've all left.
Yeah, no shit.
I'm dead. Or I will be soon. Got me
What a macabre scene, though. I love that Ellie's just kind of thumbing through things.
She's pretty frustrated with not having found the Fireflies, not knowing where to go.
Man, I love Steve Bloom's voice. He makes me want to clear my throat.
Trying to save the world.
It's mean.
Good luck with that.
Do you know where that is?
I know the city.
Is it far?
Again, this is where we really start kind of getting a sense of how Joel and Ellie are just chasing their tail. There's, you know, chasing a phantom.
Get down.
Oh.
For me, is what I wanted from this is not to overplay it, not to like have Ellie cry or scream or.
Shit. Joel. Here.
There's probably a lot of panic that happened between this moment and the next.
Well, and what
Not
a great line too. You got to tell me what to do. When almost the entire game she said, "Don't tell me what to do."
And here is where we've been lying to everybody when we've been saying you don't play as Ellie.
That's right.
Yeah.
Asked point blank. Do you play as Ellie?
No.
Nope.
I know.
In this moment, a lot of this project and the story has been constructed around this moment, which is where the roles flip, where now it's Ellie that has to protect Joel and essentially bring him back to life.
Bye-bye, Bunny.
It's a pretty cool reveal too. To pan up.
And
there's Ellie as the hunter.
what we wanted here is also is like, you don't know exactly what happened to Joel, what's the state, how much time has passed.
Poor buddy.
But the way that she's doing that, you can see that she's been doing this for a while.
You'll just startle it.
Remember how tired your arms got holding that bow stretched?
That bow, it was so heavy. And I remember that I was shaking and I was like, hey guys, this is really heavy.
There's David. Nolan North.
Nolan North, ladies and gentlemen.
Ruben Langdon is James.
Ruben Langdon, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry.
Here's my friend James. From a large
Remember, like, I showed Nolan a part of the game early on, and he's like, oh, you gotta get me a part somewhere in there. I'm like, okay, I got something for you.
I got a role for you. But I will say this, because I mean, I was on set just for a brief part of this, but that's when I mean, I've always been a fan of Nolan's work, but that's when I was truly awed by him at how he crafted this character. He took what you had and just really brought it to life.
Yeah, I told him the most important part is don't play a bad guy.
Yeah.
This guy's charismatic. We have to believe that people will follow this guy.
And that Ellie could trust him.
Yeah.
Buddy boy can go get it. He comes back with what I need. The deer is all yours. Anyone else shows up.
You put one right between my eyes.
That's right.
It just shows what versatility Nolan really has.
Yeah, that voice, I mean,
It's so comforting.
it is very comforting, but it's interesting now that I'm hearing it, knowing what we went through. It's a little unsettling now, hearing it. 'Cause I'm like, ugh.
Back up.
It's a weird gameplay thing, but we went through a version where like, okay, she can only carry one long gun at a time, so we have to put the bow on the ground. They're like, no, it's going to be 2 guns. Okay, well, let's put the bow back on her backpack. No, it's she can carry 2. And we removed the scope. They used to have a scope on it. We're like, oh, we don't want Ellie to have the scope.
Bring him with us.
I remember being so relieved in this scene when we switched the gun out and I got to put the bow down. I was like, ah.
I love how David complies too. How he just kind of like submits to a little girl.
Well, the thing is like, he knows the stories. He knows what happened in the university. And he's trying to figure this kid out. This whole sequence, he's sizing her up.
How early or how late on in the script did you write David?
I mean, it was written not that long before we shot it.
Because remember you
it started out
mentioned,
from
like,
a pretty
Cannibal
small.
King.
Yeah, it was referred as the Cannibal King. We just knew that Ellie was going to run into the worst of mankind, and she would persevere and come out on the other side. But then once like Nolan came in and started like putting David together, it was like it became a lot more interesting to make him this really charismatic guy that is just infatuated with Ellie. Now things get real, you see who kind of glimpses of who he really is.
Because there is that moment in that other scene where he makes it seem like, okay, you're in control, but she never was.
Yeah.
I've had some practice.
Well, you handled yourself pretty nice back there.
What's cool about David and the conversation I had with Nolan about him is that he's trying to win Ellie over by being honest with her. And here's the part where he's like, I feel like she's ready. I'm going to kind of reveal myself.
No such thing as luck.
And I think like I could still get her to come around.
Now, you see, I believe that everything happens for a reason.
Sure.
The other interesting thing, thematically, that's everything happens for a reason is the same thing that Marlene really believes. That everything happens, like it's something she repeats to Joel at the end. But you're kind of seeing how all these characters are just, how much they're willing to go for what they believe in.
When you talked about like being surprised by your own writing, was that a moment like that, or was that something that you had intentionally done to where those characters were going to?
No, I think it's just something you think about, and there's a theme that just kind of sticks around in the project, and then characters end up talking about that stuff because you're thinking about it all the time.
Traveling with a little girl. You see, everything happens for a reason.
Again, another one of those moments where you think Ellie's got control.
Don't get upset. It's not your fault.
Yeah, and then James there.
I'm just a kid.
I love that.
James, lower the gun.
No way, David. I'm not gonna let her go.
It was such a small role, but I really like what Ruben added there. And that the dynamics between James and David, how there's conflict between these two characters, but there's still respect, and he's still listening to David, even though he's questioning his leadership right there.
No, that's not your concern.
Part of me, the way I read that was every time James looked at David, it was like, who the fuck are you right now? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, he was putting on a show and he saw it.
Oh, thanks.
To me, it's interesting how David almost treats Ellie like quarry. Like, you know, you're a sport.
Yeah.
Again, Ellie having this kind of bullshit detector, you see her scared here because I think she realizes there's something really wrong with these guys. I don't know what. I just need to get away.
So interesting from watching this, though, I would completely believe David. I'd follow the guy. It's crazy.
It's because you're a cannibal. This little moment, this breath before going to see what's downstairs. And again, for players, it would have been like a while now since they've seen Joel.
Joel?
Once again, Joel's asleep.
I only managed to get a little bit of food.
I love how these roles have switched, too. Where now it's, you know, the protected taking care of the protector.
Move your arm.
It used to be open, and then we're like, we should probably stitch that up.
It was also on the other side. We had to come back and reshoot it, too. Oh, continuity.
Actually, this one, I remember we shot this one again because this is going Naughty Dog method. Everybody can like say the 2 cents. Amy Puckett, one of our coordinators, said, "Where's Ellie's backpack?" And we shot it without thinking about Ellie's backpack. And it was like, oh, we should bring it back in and use it as a pillow. It's like such a cool little touch.
You're gonna make it.
Yeah, those shivering things was pretty cool.
Yeah. It's a towel thing, right?
Let's see, you did that.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
he
obviously he animated it, but
a great moment of them falling asleep next to each other too. Again, her watching over him. To me, you really get a sense of the oppressiveness of the world with all the introduction with all of these different kinds of enemies. It's like you feel like you're fighting this multi-front battle. It's not just these are the bad guys, and it's so clear.
yeah, and just how much Ellie's now willing to put herself on the line to just get them away from Joel.
Wakey, wakey.
It's interesting how much audio has made all of this way creepier. We were watching it without audio.
It's like the Foley of what he's cutting up and back and stuff. Yeah. Ugh.
Time to eat.
And that's the first time you actually see what it is, that you've heard them refer to it.
No, this is the first time you just see it, and it's again, I really wanted to downplay the whole cannibalism thing. It's just something they have to do.
Super.
He comes to bring her a tray of food.
This was so cool to watch when you guys were doing this scene. It's just like this battle of the wills where he's just trying to like get in her head and she will not let him. She won't give in.
Yeah, this was one of my favorite scenes to shoot because
Some human helping on the side.
there's just so much there. I mean, the cannibalism and then him being all like rapey and molesty. Like, I don't know. I'm a fan of the dark stuff, which you know. So when I read it, I was like, yes. Which makes me sound like an awful person, which I am. So
I don't know what that says about me that I wrote this.
I know. I remember that night that I went home, I was just in a funky mood.
We have to take care of our own, by any means necessary.
It was like it was a cooler thing to read about it than actually having to go in there. It was really hard to do.
Yeah.
You're gonna chop me up into tiny pieces.
See, again, I see David being this very gracious person.
I mean, everything he's saying is kind of true. It's like, you kill to survive, we kill to survive. It's just what you do in this world. But again, Ellie just is feeling there's something else here.
I still don't look at David as a bad guy at this point.
Yeah. Oh, that's what too is like you were talking to me before we got this whole David thing, and it's like, you want to work with Nolan North? I want to do a scene with Nolan North. I want to do this. And I'm like, oh, we cast Nolan North. Like, great. I'm like, but you don't act with him at all.
Jeez.
Yeah, I feel super lucky I got to work with him because he's
the king.
He's so fun to work with.
I mean, he really owned it. He threw himself into it, like darkness and all. And again, talking to him about it, he's like, I don't see him as dark. This is just what he wants. That's it.
I think David believes his own line of bullshit. Or whether it's bullshit or not, I think David believes that he actually is doing the right thing.
I mean, that's the other thing we discussed with Nolan is like there's a religious part to David, even though I never wanted that to come out in the script. But he really kind of believes that he's been sent here and he has this destiny that nothing can really harm him.
What am I supposed to tell the others now?
And you really took that on the chin that day, too.
Man, this whole sequence with David, I was so beat up and bruised.
I remember you came back the following day with bruises.
I was like, guys, look at me. I had bruises
We're like,
everywhere.
oh, that looks bad, but
we're making a game now.
Yeah.
I love that you made it the little girl that broke your fucking finger.
Yeah. That was a good call, Neil.
Well, he calls her stupid little girl, so she throws it back in his face. I also like that she gives him her name under her conditions, which is, I'm going to give it to you, but I'm going to insult you. Right.
I also like the fact that Ellie is still so strong that even though she's in that cage, she's still
kind of in control.
Yeah.
But it's a much stronger, that's a different strength than you'd shown anywhere else in the game before. It's like that winter was a really, really hard winter for you.
Here's another funny scene.
Wow.
Well, and you're wrong. I did get to actually act with Nolan in this. Nolan was a trooper and let me torture him.
Although we did record over his lines with Liam O'Brien.
That's right, the lovely Lob.
The lovely Liam O'Brien. This actually is my favorite scene in the game.
Is it really?
And it, after I saw you guys shoot it, and then when I saw the animation and everything, I was like, I just love the scene.
What is it about it you love so much?
I love that Joel is just quietly violent. And that you pop off the guy's
This is his
kneecap.
job, right? This is what he's good at.
Yeah.
He's
Well,
just
And it's also for me, when we talked about this, it's like Joel going back to this, like, all right, you want this guy? I'll be this guy. We've spent almost the entire game for him to stay away from being that guy. But in this, and it's like, I still know
it's like
how
we're
to
going
fuck you
back to
up.
the moment in the beginning we saw him with Robert and Tess.
Yeah.
This is what he does. This is what he's done in this world.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. He's good at it.
Chokes him out and breaks his neck right there. All for the benefit of that guy.
And it's like, if there's any like notion that someone has hurt Ellie, then I'm gonna make every single one of you guys pay.
That's all right. I believe him.
No, wait!
And actually, this is the scene where I think he got beat up the most.
Yeah.
Where you did?
Yo, yeah.
Yeah.
I had bruises over my whole entire body. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, this wasn't stunts. This was you.
I warned you.
The thing that I love about this scene is how much Ellie's using her brains and her physicality, like everything, to like get out of this situation.
Right there. Roll up my sleeve. Look at it!
I'll play along.
What'd you say?
Ruben helped so much during this part because choreographing sort of all of the little movements were so particular. And I think everybody sort of knew at this point that I kept hurting people. So Ruben was like, you have to give her the foam knife because she will hit me.
You were beating the shit out of that foam pad. I don't know what you were channeling.
I have a lot of anger.
Stop! Stop!
Fucking touch me!
It's okay. It's me. It's me.
We did very few takes of this. This was like maybe 3 takes.
Yeah.
He tried to...
I just felt like so intense with each one. It was like, yeah, we got it. That's enough.
It's the first time that, Ellie and Joel, like, embrace was that physical contact. And it's such a great choice, I think, for you the dialogue wasn't important.
Yeah, it was just a gesture. So it was like, just let the music take over. And it's the same theme from when, his daughter dies. This was the scene where you got the most emotional. You almost cried in this scene.
Oh, that's right.
We don't have to do this. You know that, right?
First time Joel questions the whole idea of this mission.
But in a different way, though. Before it was, why am I wasting my time doing this? And now I'm saying, maybe that's not what we need. Maybe that's not the answer.
Maybe it's not worth it.
Well, yeah, it's not worth it. But I love that this comes off of what you said was one of your favorite moments, which was the
giraffe sequence. That fleeting moment where Ellie gets to be a kid one last time after the whole David sequence.
And how you even played that visually with, you just kind of catch the very last end of the giraffes moving there. So here we go.
Oh, Ellie's dead.
And I'm sure it was such an intentional thing to call back to the very beginning, to where Joel finds himself in this situation again. And after everything that we've been through, it's like, I won't go through this. And
Hands in the air.
just that irrational, maddening, desperate calling for help.
From this point forward, it's like the beginning backwards, where if this is the point Sarah dies, like now you're about to do the carry.
Yeah.
Then you like play as Ellie walking, like viewing Joel from the outside, and then you end on the shot with Ellie. So it's like the beginning reversed.
Sorry about that. They didn't know who
Let
you
me
were.
say Marlene again.
And Ellie?
She's all right. They brought her back.
The discussions I had with Merle about this scene is, again, her desperation to find someone that will understand, that will empathize with her decision to kill Ellie to save humanity. And she's hoping she could get that out of Joel because he's the only other person that has cared for Ellie the way she has. And she can't get that out of him.
I just think it was such a great way to bookend, to kind of start and begin with Marlene. And it's so great that they were able to capture just the strength that she has, even when she was sitting in that chair.
Yeah.
And again, she's completely empathetic, even though she's supposed to be antagonistic.
It's a very similar line to what David says.
You don't have to worry about her anymore. We'll take care of her.
I worry. Just let me see her, please.
You can't. She's being prepped.
This is one I've always seen Joel in the most parental role.
Surgery.
The doctors tell me the cordyceps, the growth inside her, has somehow mutated. It's why she's immune. Once they remove it, they'll be able to reverse engineer a vaccine.
Yeah, her performance here was just
stellar.
So flawless.
It does.
I remember talking with the music guys that were putting a lot of Gustavo's music, and the first few passes were there was this dark music that was playing here once Marlene reveals that Ellie's going to die, and I was like, we can't play Marlene as bad because she's not bad.
She's not.
I mean, she's trying to save everybody.
I knew her since she was born.
And if anything, I told him was like, you can go dark with Joel, because again, when Ellie's life is on the line, Ellie's in danger, he lets himself slip back into the murderer, the killer,
right,
however you want to view it.
It's so interesting. I wonder how many players, like, especially in this moment right here, how many sided with Marlene and how many think that Joel was actually the wrong one. It's like, dude, listen to what she's saying.
At the same time, this is the theme of the game for me right here. Is as a father, you will kill everybody else to save your kid, and that has always been kind of the through line for me. Is Joel's willing to go to the end of the line, meaning sacrifice humanity to save Ellie.
Again,
Robin Atkin Downs.
Guess what's going to happen to him? But this was so cool, too, because, I mean, we've seen all the way through both cinematic and gameplay, you know, Joel is able to take on everybody, but just this moment of resolve that I'm going to wait for my moment. And it almost looks like he's a beaten, defeated person.
Give me an excuse.
And that grimace right there, it's like, no, he's not.
Which way?
Yeah, again, the way you've interpreted Joel is like a man who lets his emotions get the better of him here has to keep them in check. You see how like he wants to destroy this man and everybody here for what they're doing to Ellie, but he has to wait. He has to catch the right moment.
I say keep walking.
Bam.
Where's the operating room?
And again, just such a brutal scene. There's no threat here. It's
just time. Time is the threat.
Now I'll let you die.
This scene used to originally be all in the operating room. And Joel wasn't carrying Ellie. He killed Marlene and the doctors in the operating room. And then Peter Field, designer, just kept bugging me. He's like, I feel like we have to play this part. It's, you know, you have to carry Ellie out yourself. You can't just be like hinted at. And we ended up switching the whole structure of this thing. He was right. It was like it worked way better.
That was another one of those moments where we're like, we're done, we've got it. No, we don't.
as a cinematic, it was. I thought it was perfect. But as a bigger part of the game, it was weaker than letting you play through some of it.
She won't feel anything.
Again, the only hesitation Joel has is that this is what Ellie wants.
And it's such a great decision to show, just cut to this, give the audience, the player, just one last moment of, well, what did he choose? Just to sit in that decision.
It was also important to show the lie against the reality because the lie has so much weight here at the end. Throughout the game, Joel has never lied to Ellie. He might have disagreed or he might have dismissed her, but he's never outright lied to her.
What happened?
And for me, this was the moment I decided to lie.
We found the fireflies. Turns out there's a whole lot more like you, Ellie. People that
To me, it hurt to say these things.
ain't done him a damn bit of good neither.
Because once Ellie started believing that I actually had something, that I was someone, you're basically telling Ellie, you're not special, you're not important, and everything you've done was for nothing.
I'm taking this home.
Yeah, in the first few versions of the scenes, there's like Ellie had all these questions like,
sorry,
what happened? Why? Who was there? Why would they let you take me out with the gown still on? And it just was better if she said nothing and she just turned her back to him. And again, just to show how far Joel's willing to go to remove any threat for Ellie.
I mean, we had talked about this before where, you know, she obviously has that bullshit detector.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go.
And I just felt like I knew you were lying. You know, I feel like Ellie knows you're lying.
Come on.
There we go, the end. So, original ending for this, way back when we put the outline for the story together, is that Ellie believed the lie and they went off to Tommy's, and it was kind of like this wide tracking shot as you see them kind of getting smaller and smaller walking off to Tommy's. But as we went through the story and the characters got more and more developed, it's like it didn't feel honest. It didn't feel like Ellie would buy into all of it.
And she got bit too. We didn't know what to do.
I remember we went over and over and over this scene. Little things changed. But every time I sat and watched you tell this story, I was just raptured by it. It was so easy to listen to you tell this story.
I'm still waiting for my turn.
Ellie.
Her name was Riley, and she was the first to die. And then it was Tess. And then Sam.
None of that is on you.
You don't understand.
I struggled for a long time with surviving. And you, no matter what, you keep finding something to fight for. Now, I know that's not what you want to hear right now.
Interesting hearing arguments around the office about how people interpret that last line, that last okay from Ellie. Whether it's, okay, I believe you, or okay, I could put this behind us, or okay, I don't trust you anymore and it's over.
Okay.
That's it.
I hope you guys enjoyed this. For some of the scenes, it's the first time we had a chance to take a look at it, and it was interesting to kind of, in retrospect, after everything that we've been through, be able to kind of recall what we were thinking on that day, and then 2.5 years later, how we feel about these things.
It's interesting we're ending this on the credits because there's so many people that have. All these people have put the story together, right? I mean, whether it's artists or programmers or. Without all these people, none of this comes through. It doesn't matter how good the story is or the performance is.
There's hundreds of hands that this goes through.
Yeah. And it gets different kind of interpretations throughout the way until you end up with the final thing that hopefully you guys enjoyed.
Yeah, making the new IP is, how can I put it? It's just don't do it. It's insane. I mean, it's a very difficult process. You have more questions than you have answers, especially when you come from you've been making Uncharted 1 and Uncharted 2, just kind of now things are going, you just kind of good momentum, and then suddenly that momentum like just drops, it stops. It's a very challenging process to create a new IP, and you're gonna fail over and over again, but that's what it takes.
New IPs are really hard. They're hard because you don't know what's fun yet. You're building new tech, new AI, establishing new characters, new art, all this. You don't get that controller in your hand for like 6 months to a year.
You don't know. You don't know what it is yet. I remember like ages ago coming on the project and what are the Infected going to do? Like, what are they going to do? They're going to behave like this. I'm like, okay. We're like trying to imagine what's going to happen. Fast forward like 4 months, they don't do that at all because it didn't work, right?
It's hard mode, right? Like it's game development on expert.
There's a big thing about making a game, right? Which is a game has to be fun. You get your first build where everything's working. You got player mechanics. You can walk around the world. You can shoot. You can melee attack people. You've got the AI in there. They're very intelligent, very difficult, and it's totally not fun because they snuck up behind you and murdered you in a second, and there was no way to figure out what was going on. We're making a game, by the way. Hey, James.
The company has grown quite a bit since I started. I think I was the 12th employee or something back when we got started, but we've tried to stay true to those smaller studio roots.
I've been here for 16 years. There's just no reason to leave. I just like the environment here. It's very non-corporate.
I think the way we work on Naughty Dog is kind of special because we don't really like hierarchy or bureaucracy, and no one is really just a manager here.
Naughty Dog has a very flat structure. We pretty much all report to the co-presidents and the game directors.
I always tell people when we hire them, just like, my job is going to be able to trust you, and that's what I want. I want just to give you something and you go with it, and I know it's going to get done.
We believe in iteration, we believe in collaboration, and we believe in the people making the game working directly with each other.
When we have designers and artists, animators all mixed up, anybody that's working on the same tasks, the same characters, the same areas, put them next to each other so they can communicate a lot better.
We don't have a lot of meetings because if you need something to get done, you just walk over and you talk, and then you go back to your desk and you finish it up.
And I really like that. I like when I just walk in the office and I see just designers talking with the programmers or programmers over the animators and talking to them. I think that's when really the magic happens.
Naughty Dog, we really try to cultivate a culture where anybody can criticize anybody else's work.
And we encourage people to be blunt about it and not try to sugarcoat it too much. It takes too long to be nice sometimes.
It's not personal. It's based on more like how can we make a better game.
We want everybody to have a voice. We want to cut out all the bullshit if we can, making sure that people are making decisions not based on ego, but what is going to benefit the game.
When you see that people trust your opinion and that they value it, it's such a great feeling. You really feel like you're working as a team on a collaborative effort.
We want to sort of remember where we came from and you know why we were successful then, and try to continue that success now.
We make games. That's what we like to do.
Back when Uncharted 2 wrapped up and we decided that we were going to build the second team and create a new project, we kicked around a lot of ideas. One of the very earliest ideas was to go back to Jak and Daxter. It's really near and dear to us. We really love those characters in that universe, and we think that there are some interesting stories still to be told there. We started to realize that it was not going to do justice to the franchise that the fans had fallen in love with. It would be shifting it so far in a new direction that we felt that effort would be more justified in developing a new IP. Neil and Bruce came to Christoph and I and said they wanted to do a post-apocalyptic game. I think the core essence of what they wanted to do, though, was to try to tell a story about two people and how their relationship evolves over the course of the entire game.
That potential, oh wow, there is something very special about that game. This is going to be polished. Like, you're not sure if it's gonna work or not, and you have doubts. And like, should we be doing a game like that? Should we be doing a first-person shooter? Whatever. Like, you ask yourselves all those questions.
And the creative director and the game director are the core of the team that have to really see eye to eye.
That's why you have that balance between like Bruce and Neil, and Neil's gonna try to push the just the story and the characters, and Bruce is going to try to push that with just the gameplay as well. And so it's kind of like those guys are just trying always to find the right balance between the two. It's a very delicate process.
We feel that the interactive medium has an untapped potential to touch the feelings of the player. You have that connectivity, the fact that I'm actually in the world and participating in what's happening on the screen in front of me gives us some sort of advantage to make you feel connected with what's actually happening. At Naughty Dog, that's what we're trying to do, is pair story and gameplay together. If we can make you feel like you're actually with these characters on that journey, and you're invested in those stories and those characters, then you're feeling, in theory, the same thing that they're feeling.
As the story evolved and took different shapes and different forms, the thing that was always there was Joel and Ellie. And because of that, everything kind of grew out of that relationship.
We've seen kind of that role of the anti-hero change, especially over the last 3 to 5 years, to where before it was like, the thick-neck mercenary kind of guy. For this game specifically, for this story, we needed something new.
The reason we didn't want to make Ellie Joel's daughter from the get-go is because it wouldn't have anywhere to go. Of course, at that point, he'd be willing to do anything for his daughter because that is what a dad would do for his daughter. They didn't even know each other at the beginning of the story. Then we start from scratch. It's almost like the player has the same relationship to Ellie as Joel does. And we could take our time to build that relationship between these characters. And if we do it right, then the player will be feeling that same growth that Joel does. And we're kind of mirroring that emotional relationship between the two.
What are you doing?
Killing time.
Well, what am I supposed to do?
I am sure you will figure that out.
Your watch is broken.
It's exciting that Neil wrote something like this, where he's like, I don't want to make the stereotypical characters. I want to make real people in this crazy situation and these forced to make decisions that are really tough. Like, what would we be like in those situations?
I mean, we weren't consciously trying to pick male or female for characters. You just try to pick characters and just be honest with who they are. It almost doesn't matter, right? Joel's daughter could have been Joel's son. Ellie could have been a boy, and Joel might have been Tess. You could have swapped those roles, and I think the story would have still worked.
The focus on female strength, it's so unique. You get to see what's so powerful about a woman through all of these female characters, which makes this game wonderful and unique. There's a crew of Fireflies that'll meet you at the Capitol building.
That's not exactly close.
You're capable. You hand her off, come back, the weapons are yours. Double what Robert sold me.
Speaking of which, where are they?
Back in our camp.
We're not smuggling shit until I see them.
I want Joel to watch over her.
Whoa, I don't think that's the
I'm not
best
going
Ellie.
with him. How do you know them?
I do think having a strong female character, especially like Ellie, is so rare in video games. And as a gamer, and more specifically a female gamer, it's frustrating to me because I'll see sort of the stereotypical female character where she's amazingly beautiful and huge boobs, and she's there to be either the love interest or just because they're like, well, we need to throw a chick in here.
We've seen the strong woman or we've seen the weak woman. We haven't necessarily seen the empowered woman from this kind of standpoint. And there's that beautiful scene where Joel finds her inside the house, and she's reading through this girl's journal going, is this really what they used to worry about? What shirt do I wear, and what boy am I going to go out with? You know, and to be met with those first world problems that we deal with every day and go, how trivial is all of this? I think it's going to resonate a lot, not just with, you know, a female audience, but with a male audience as well.
The thing that was intriguing to me after the fact is knowing that we're kind of creating a female action hero in a way, and this is her origin story with Ellie.
To sort of be such a strong female character that is completely normal looking, regular t-shirt and jeans, and she's 14 and she is still a total badass, is really exciting to be a part of that.
There's so few non-sexualized women in video games, especially in the main role, that we were kind of proud that we were creating one. It's very complex, and without the players knowing it, she becomes the protagonist by the end of the story. And that's why she's in the front of the box, and that's why we've been promoting the two of them together so much.
Who's there? It is a dual protagonist game, and yeah, I guess I get nervous to think about it in that way.
We couldn't talk about it. In fact, in interviews we've been lying about it, saying you never play as Ellie because it was so important for that to be a surprise. Sorry, journalists.
Here we go. Sorry. Hold on. That's it.
The tone of the game was set pretty early on that we knew that we wanted to make a really grounded story. We knew that we wanted to make the player feel the sense of tension and dread and go through the same emotional roller coaster that Joel and Ellie were going through.
One of the things we kind of struggled with is to say, well, if we want to really ground this world and make it so like realistic, maybe we shouldn't have anything that could be perceived as a monster. Maybe like by just having an infection that just killed people, and it's all about humans and how they deal with this post-apocalyptic society and how different people decide to survive. Maybe that would be enough. And what we realized is because we're making an action game, a lot of the storytelling happens on the joystick. And once we remove the infected, it's like all of a sudden now we can't tell the story through gameplay of what happened to the world. And that's where we kind of went back and kind of brought the infected back in, because it lets you see, once you're fighting them, the threat that people had to deal with, that otherwise would just be very cerebral and people could talk about it, but you couldn't necessarily experience it yourself. In a novel, that might work. In a game for us, specifically an action game, it didn't work.
And from there, when we start kicking around those ideas, and we're just like, what would be cool just to play?
The early inception for it really came from a BBC video we saw called Planet Earth, where they were talking about a cordyceps fungus.
This cordyceps fungus gets inside of the brain and controls these ants, and mandibles start chomping, they grow up to higher areas, cordyceps fungus sprouts out, and then it germinates.
And essentially uses them to spread its infection and take over whole colonies, sometimes wiping them out. As soon as we saw it, we were intrigued by the idea of, what if it jumped to humans? So what would happen? How would people react? What would happen to society? As we're trying to develop the look of the infected, we went through so many different iterations, some that looked really alien and subhuman, some that looked just essentially like zombies, and we couldn't find like an original place for them. But one of our artists just did this kind of photo mashup where he took a bunch of images of diseases or images of fungal overgrowth, and he kind of mashed it all together and he threw it on this person.
It was a very iterative process, making sure that the fungus felt properly integrated, like it was part of the body, growing out of the body.
And not just fungus growing in the head, but it's tearing the face apart, cleft down the middle, this gaping maw of a mouth with the crooked teeth.
And it's in great agony as its humanity and its brain is still somewhat functioning. Maybe you still have some human cognitive abilities or thought process back here.
This isn't some decaying corpse on the ground. This is a living thing that's going to be coming after you in the world.
The fungus is always the focal point. So you can see from a distance, oh, this guy's infected. I can tell straight away.
In fungus, they have these beautiful saturated colors, and we really like that conscious of this something so horrific that it's going to like stop at nothing. It's relentless force of death, and yet elements of it are beautiful. It's not just about gore. It's not just about everything about it being scary, because to us it's actually scarier when things on it are somewhat benign or somewhat beautiful.
It was evident that we were onto something that was quite a bit different and something that we hadn't really seen before, which was eerily human but very disturbing.
And it seemed so creepy and so unique that right away we gravitated towards it, and it was like, this is our base infected, everything should kind of come out of this look. So once we had this idea of the face-splitting kind of look that eventually became what we called the clicker stage.
We went to great lengths to create a full biological cycle for these things.
So in the early stages, you don't actually see too many signs of the fungus surfacing out of the skin. It's kind of underneath it, like people have lumps starting to show. The eyes will be kind of cloudy or lopsided because the fungus kind of originates inside the head.
That moves into the next phase, which is the clicking phase.
And if they mess with the eyes, we end up saying, well, how do they get around? Oh, echolocation.
And they use a form of echolocation to track down their enemies.
Just like bats or even some blind people can see by making a clicking sound, a sound that on its own wouldn't be very scary. And then to associate it with something that people in this world are very fearful of, so that as you're exploring an environment, all of a sudden you hear this click, and you're seeing everybody just get frightened, just everybody duck, everybody hushes.
Great.
The bloater is the most severe of the stages. So large pieces of the body has been replaced by these kind of fungal plates.
The fungus completely takes over the body and blooms.
They're kind of covered in things that have been growing on them. Things like moss and like little life on life kind of.
What the fuck is that?
Oh, goddamn bloater!
When an infected feels like it's going to die, it finds like a dark corner and it becomes part of the environment.
The human elements aren't there anymore.
And then the body is gone.
They lay down and sprout and then spew spores.
And if people can breathe those spores, they become infected as well. It all had to kind of make sense of how each stage flowed from one to the other. And that's hopefully how we've created a world that you can kind of look through it and understand the science behind it and say, I could buy this, I could get into this.
Mandatory evacuation. Evacuate to where?
What do you think? Quarantine zone. See, some places got a heads up before the infection showed up. Most didn't.
Over the course of Joel and Ellie's journey through this game across America,
you find all these different societies, all these different enclaves, and you get to see how do they deal with the infected.
Without the manifestation of this infection, you can't have these people making those interesting choices.
The world we decided was actually its own character, really grounded with a lot of texture. What happens, after 20 years of the fall of man, when no one's taking care of anything?
This book called The World Without Us describes in detail how much fighting on a day-to-day basis we have to do to keep nature back. And once you stop doing that, how quickly nature can reclaim that. As they talk about New York and how every day they pump water out of the subway system. That system breaks down. Within 2 days, a whole city is flooded. And once water gets introduced, then structures collapse pretty quickly. Trees will sprout and wind will carry those seeds over and gutters get clogged. And then when it rains, water fills up and then pretty soon you have vegetation growing over there. And once you have vegetation, concrete breaks pretty easily for when there's a tree and roots breaking through that. Even some of the stuff we did on Uncharted, exploration of how temples were ruined. What if you took those ideas and put them in Pittsburgh or Boston?
And obviously right when that happened, you can imagine that being pretty terrible to look at. But you think about 20 years later, and with rainwater filling up those sinkholes and then those becoming like little marshes with lily pads in them.
We had this wonderful piece of concept art we developed really early on, and there are all of these wild animals that have escaped from a zoo and over the past 20 years have bred, and now they have herds roaming these cities. And that's something that tells you that life goes on and this world is worth saving.
There's something really pretty about nature reclaiming its domain once we are gone.
So fucking cool.
We have another level of OCD, of the logic goes into some of these environments. Water damage seeps in, and then that creates some little moss growing on the floor, or a tree radiates energy from its base, and that over time starts to melt the snow around it. And that's the reason why you'd see those like rings of leaves showing through in the snow. That gives it that extra, believability. This is pitch art. I'll try to start with an idea that conveys sort of the feel of the environment. Something like this, very brushstrokey, very painterly. You can see not a lot of detail, just energy and conveying a mood. This is sort of just a conversation starter, and then this would be more of an actual space. So you start talking about, is this too tight of a space right here? Would the player even fit through there? Do we even want to include water? Those are conversations you start having a little bit later. And then it usually needs several more passes back and forth in order to be tightened up to be the experience that you would see in the final product. So, dude, I was actually trying to figure out right here, there should probably be some dead foliage.
It might be cool to see some of the dead stuff around the edges of the green, or like even spilling out into the street.
Maybe what we do is, in some of these areas, we use it as like a transition from the actual concrete to the side of the building, so like they're almost sitting on top of a bed of dead foliage, like that really rich kind of like orangey brown color.
Sienna or something would be nice. Something real cheddary.
That's how you know you're done. The end product often ends up being stronger because that bouncing back off somebody else gives you a result that maybe you wouldn't have even thought of in the first place.
All right, here's the bridge. That's our way out of here.
As far as concept art goes, definitely the ultimate goal is just helping everybody as much as possible.
Me and the background artist will work together. I'll often just go to them because they've got like a really, really good like visual imagination. At some point, you came in almost like flat on. So that's kind of good because the bus station is right in your peripheral view, and you're probably going to enter the bus station. You're probably not going to get lost. But it doesn't at all utilize this cool architecture here, like the bus station sign. Like that's a really distinctive silhouette, and it's a really interesting sort of architectural detail. So we changed the entrance.
Look at that. Another city, another abandoned quarantine zone.
I think it's a better composition anyway. It's not so like symmetrical. And I think that was done so that this sign read better. If you didn't see the word bus on it, you might not know it's a bus station. So I think that helps.
Everything we're doing in the environments is relating back to what you should be feeling in the story or what's happening to these characters.
So is that everything you hoped for?
Jury's still out. But man, can't deny that view.
Come on, this way.
When we first came up with Ellie and Joel, we had this idea in our heads of who they would be, but we didn't necessarily know the voice.
It took us a while to find our Joel, but for Ellie, I think Ashley was the second or third candidate to walk in, and right away we knew.
Yeah, you know
Why
what?
are you so scared all of a sudden?
Because I'm a coward, okay? So just get your shit and let's get out of here.
Damn it. I'm not like her, you know. You think I'm gonna end up like your daughter?
The way she delivered the lines, the way she just embodied that character is like, that's Ellie, there's no question about it.
I saw the character artwork and I related to her a lot. I mean, she's kind of a tomboy and she's kind of tough, and I mean, obviously I'm not 14, and I think that's the main difference between the two of us. I read the scenes and I was like, I need to play this part.
You wanna be my hero? Forget the whole bit about saving my life. Buy me a stack of these bad boys instead.
Where'd you get that?
Back at Bill's. I mean, all this stuff was just lying around.
And then once we had her, we said, okay, well, we're going to do another round, and we're going to have Ashley this time in the casting sessions. The chemistry of these two characters was imperative to get right.
Troy was a really interesting casting for Joel because when you see Troy, he doesn't look like Joel at all.
You know, he's so handsome and he had like, you know, the frosty hair and totally looked like Final Fantasy. And so
I'm like, yeah, I don't know. He's like this tall, pretty. It didn't seem right.
I walked into the room fully aware that I was the youngest person that they were seeing for this role. There was a line that was in the audition side that says that Joel has few moral lines left to cross. And so that became the anchor point to the character.
But then as soon as he spoke, and he had the grit in his voice.
Warm, yet kind of dangerous.
And his movement is just like, you bought into it.
Why are you so scared all of a sudden?
Because I'm a big coward, okay? Now pack up your shit and let's go.
God damn it. I'm not her, you know.
What?
You think I'm gonna end up like your daughter?
Lily, you are treading on some very thin ice right now.
It was Ellie and Joel.
After he read, it was just like, that was it.
I've done some video games in the past, but to be handed the mantle of a franchise like this was a pretty big honor.
Is she alive?
She's alive. She's David's newest pet. Ah!
Where?
In the town. She's in the town.
You mark it on the map. It better be the same exact spot your buddy points to.
Neil pulled me aside one day, and he said, I have some ideas. And as you're well aware, Neil is a little twisted. He came up with this character, and, you know, I just jumped at it. It was such a departure from everything I've done here for Naughty Dog, to say the least.
Name's David. This here's my friend James. We're from a larger group. Women, children. We're all very, very hungry.
To be able to put on a voice that, you know, hopefully a lot of people won't know, won't notice that it's even me. Because we didn't want it to be Drake. Drake eating people, that's a whole nother game.
How did you put it? Tiny pieces. See you tomorrow, Ellie.
You know, certain voices that I can do wouldn't fit the David's artwork, but he showed me the art, and I
said maybe it's something like this, where everything's, you know, it's very quiet. And just, you know, he's not really sure, and the voice can break a little.
And he just looked and goes, yeah, that's it. So I'd love to tell you, we hashed it over and we talked. No, it just, I looked at the picture and I tried something. He said, yeah.
A few weeks back, I sent a group of men out a nearby town to look for food. Only a few came back. And turns out that the others had been slaughtered by a crazy man. And get this, he was with a little girl. You see, everything happens for a reason.
Claire.
Ashley, she brought humor to it.
She just has some really great comedic timing. The way she reacts to the things around the world with a little bit of sarcasm, that teen kind of like trying to get a rise out of you.
Now watch your step as you're going out, because it's going to be a little...
It just brought a certain levity to the story that the story needed. You didn't even realize it needed it until she started doing some of that stuff.
Oh, I'm sure your friend will be missing this tonight.
Mm-hmm.
It's light on the reading, but it's got some interesting photos.
Now, Ellie, that ain't for kids.
Whoa! How the hell would he even walk around with that thing?
Get rid of that.
Well, hold your horses. I want to see what all the fuss is about. Oh, why are these all stuck together? I'm just fucking with you. Bye-bye, dude.
Throughout the course of shooting over these past couple of years, Ellie and I have kind of morphed into each other, which I know sounds so cheesy. Neil always asks, he's like, well, what would you do in this situation?
I think the most important thing that Ashley brought is a sense of capability to Ellie's character that wasn't there in the beginning.
The very first thing we shot involved her being pulled out of a car and attacked, and Joel was supposed to go save her.
It was written that Ellie sort of was just kind of watching on the side, just waiting till he was done, and I was a little frustrated because I was like, well, if this were real life, I would do something.
We did a couple takes, and at some point she walked up to me and she said, I feel like I'd hit him.
So we added in a part, like, right there off the bat, she's not just this damsel in distress. Right there, she wanted to fight back from her very first day of shooting.
We didn't have it right initially. She needs to be more capable than initially we thought she would be, and actually that made us go back and rethink combat and rethink a lot of the areas in the game, and now she was going to take a much more active part.
Anything that requires, a lot of body movement, we do with the actors on the mocap stage. And we try as much as possible to use our actual principal actors, use their body motion as well as their voice. We capture it all at once there on the stage.
Having the actors perform as well as being recorded at the same time was imperative to get an accurate performance. Because every time you split up the performance in any way, you lose some of that magic where they did a gesture or they delivered the line a certain way. And those things have to be in sync, or there's just something subconscious that's like off-putting about the performance when you don't do it that way.
You are treading on some mighty thin ice here.
I'm sorry about your daughter, Joel, but I have lost people too.
You have no idea what loss is.
Everyone I have cared for has either died or left me. Everyone fucking except for you. So don't tell me that I would be safer with someone else, because the truth is I would just be more scared.
It gives you the most authentic, most realistic performance, because you're actually there, not just making your own choices, but making your own choices based on the other people that are involved in that scene. So you get this truly natural approach to things, and it shows up.
It's like theater in the round. You can do anything from any angle, and the smallest, most subtle thing we'll be able to pick up.
There's no place to hide. So you have to be as prepared as possible, because you have no idea which moments they're going to use. There are these little improv moments and, little nuances that you get that probably isn't scripted, that just comes out of play, while they're performing. That mistake that is just blossomed into a really good idea.
Did we improv on The Last of Us? Yes. Yes, we did.
Doing this was a whole lot like being 5, playing in the backyard with a stick, and this is my machine gun, and, and a pine cone is my hand grenade. It's all your imagination. I'm doing the exact same shit that I did 45 years ago. I just get paid for it now. We square.
We're square.
And get the fuck out of my town.
I don't do a lot of voiceover work, so for me it was nice to be able to work off of your other actors. I can't imagine it working any other way.
I'd never done mocap before. I didn't know what to expect. The suits were crazy.
Yeah, the suit gave me wedgies. Like, deep wedgies that I had to pick out with my middle finger. Too much information.
Just how damn sexy I look in a motion capture suit. I look like 10-pound of sausage in a 5-pound casing in that thing, man.
Once you get past the fact that like everybody else and you look like weird clown people with these little dots and stuff, once you like give over to that, it really was pretty easy to make it just feel like you're in the moment and in the scene.
So everyone that was on this is a slam dunk. This isn't just another gig to them. And that creates a really cool energy for people to really start experimenting and playing jazz.
Floor is yours.
And action.
Get the fuck off of me!
Oh, let her go.
Don't worry, this is fixable. But I can't come with you.
Well, then I'm staying.
Ellie, I want Joel to watch over her.
Oh, no.
Bullshit, I
Ellie!
will.
Going to.
I could just take her to the North Tunnel and wait for me there.
Jesus Christ.
Just cargo, Joel.
How do you know them?
We craft the scene out until it has a good feel, and then we pass it off to animation to clean it up.
Real life motions don't necessarily always translate into gameplay.
There's something that's usually missing, so we have to, maybe enhance the gesture or enhance the shoulder movements or a breath that you want to be able to feel, but you don't really see it, so you can't really feel it unless you see it.
Is everything all right?
Yeah, everything's fine.
I could have them lean in here a little bit more.
like this, take his hand down. When they're on stage, they don't necessarily have windows, you know, so that weight of like really pushing and leaning in, it's something that we would have to accentuate. You know, give him a little bit more weight on that turn, or put his head down a little bit more.
There's a lot of dialogue that gets said between the two characters. We have to bring that alive through animation, and we have what we're using as gestures.
Why would they mow down all these people?
You can't let everyone in.
If you turned off the sound, you'd know that they were talking to each other. And that really helps accentuate the relationship that the two have together. We have certain animations that play in the beginning of the game on Ellie. She's traveling with Joel, who she doesn't really know. There's a lot of gestures to make her look nervous, just her overall stance. Later on in the game, they develop a relationship through the animation, not just the dialogue. You can see that she's more comfortable around him. If that reads well with the player, then, you know, we're doing our job. You want her to look scared when she gets a gun. You want her to look scared of the gun.
So if she's gonna aim, she wouldn't be like super trained aim. She would be more like some scared. But at the same time, it needs to look cool and feel cool to the player that plays.
It's really just these little tiny details that we're doing, and it's coming across. It's working out well.
We don't do facial capture. We don't track eye movements on stage. It's just the motion capture data. Everything that you see on the faces is hand keyed. As you can see, this is all of her mocap data. And so when I'm doing something like this, I go back and forth to the performance that she was giving, and I watch just this section over and over and over again. So this is our default face, where I can make everything super extreme and make her all squinty and angry, turn her frown down. I can open her mouth, stick her tongue out. It's listen, watch. Okay, where's her mouth at this point? Like, is it open? Is she making like a grimace?
About Tess. I don't even know.
Here's how this thing's gonna play out. You don't bring up Tess. Ever. Matter of fact, we just keep our histories to ourselves.
We shoot all of it to just get the body motion, and then we'll do a second pass with the cameras.
The scene's playing back on an overhead projector, but it's also playing back on a monitor that's attached to my rig.
Sean and I would go to the stage and motion capture the camera filming the scene, and so he would get a whole wide shot, a whole close-up for the whole scene.
You know, you can change your lenses, you can use your standard 35, 85, 50s, whatever, all that sort of live action camera cinematography, you can apply it on stage.
We make sure to go back in and add flaws.
We keep the confinements of the room so the camera can't go past a certain wall, because then we have this cheated perspective. If the cameraman bumps into the wall, we keep it. You know, missing focus hits when you're pulling focus, going too close to a character and reframing, those little moments in there kind of keeps it very cinema verite.
If everything was too perfect, you wouldn't be able to put your finger on it, but you'd be able to feel it. It would just feel off.
It's very much about grounding it, despite having, you know, the option to do whatever we want.
Being able to place the cameras anywhere we want after the motion capture gives us both advantages and disadvantages. The biggest advantage is it means that we just have to nail the best performances we can get, and the luxury is that we can always swap it.
The 3D world gives you limitless opportunities with cameras and movements, exposures, all that stuff. Most of these cameras are sort of set up like real world cameras. So we have lens, we have f-stop that will create the depth of field. We have aperture to, you know, set our film back and all that stuff. A master, and then I have my close-ups, my over the shoulders, sort of just like a live action production. Let's go to camera 30 at the 23.458. Then I get that kind of weird, you know, bend across his back. The closer I bring the camera, the more bend I get, which is, you know, doesn't look right. It doesn't look as, it looks less cinematic than if I do that, which flattens the whole thing. And I'm trying to also catch Ellie. Like if you scrub a little more, you know, catch her in the back here. So I want a longer lens and that kind of stuff.
Since I've only had experience working with live action before I got into video games, it was a kind of a cool adjustment to be able to have this extra flexibility in post, to swap a line of dialogue for something different, even though that's not what the actor said at that time, and to be able to still have a close-up on them while they said it. You get to make it probably more perfect than you could ever make it in live action.
How far are we gonna take
As far as it needs to go. Where was this lab of theirs?
Because our actors are both the voice and their body, they get to play, they get to try things, they get to work with our director to kind of come up with new ideas, or even our director will have a new idea on the spot that wasn't there in the script, but realizing when he sees it, oh, well, this would actually be better, this might feel better. And those changes all just happen organically there on the set.
He could even lead straight into his thing. It's like, no shit, yep, Ty wanted to do that, so we rented 2 Harleys and drove cross country.
Keep it pretty succinct, like we got the bikes, rode them cross country. Cool.
It's shocking to me that this is Neil's first time directing.
There was a specific tone and a specific approach that Neil and Bruce wanted to take with this. It just came down to, there's nobody who knows this story better than you, and then there's nobody that knows these characters better than you. Why don't you just do this?
He and I actually had a conversation about it. He says, I think I'm going to try this myself, and I'm not sure. Neil was fantastic.
The floor is yours.
Okay, so remember, you've been running away from this turret-mounted truck. If you come to this dead end, you're going to look up and see a potential way out. And action.
Check it out.
I mean, his writing is honest, and it's dangerous, and it's natural.
And I love his economy of words. He doesn't hit everything on the nose, so it leaves it open for you to interpret and bring some nuances and things like that.
The entire process is collaborative, but really it's led by Neil's willingness to change and flow and decide something doesn't work, fix it right there in the moment. And it is something that's very foreign to the way that TV and film is done now, where everything has been micromanaged by the time you get it to the table read, and no one wants you to change anything, and everything's very precious and has been rewritten with notes from 20 people in suits, and you can't do that just anywhere in entertainment these days.
Yeah, I want to make sure. I think I swung too far over to this way, and now it's a little bit of making jokes about it, and I need to bring it back to center a little bit. There's one scene in the game where we see Joel not as a ruthless survivor, but as a father. I knew from the very beginning that he was going to lose his daughter, and I just told Neil, I was like, when that day comes for us to shoot that, I need a heads up. About a week before, he said, it's time, we're going to do that scene. I was like, okay, because I knew that I was going to have to go to this place that you don't really want to go to as an actor. You want to find some aspect of reality that you can empathetically draw from,
Troy and I were both kind of just like walking around for a while and just kind of getting into the zone, and well, my grandpa died when I was 8. He was like my dad, and so that's always what I use to get into that place.
I started recalling all those memories and starting pulling up all those feelings, and they're just right underneath the surface. When I walked back in, everyone realized that something was different. They kind of calmed down,
You could feel the energy just drop a little bit more.
It was brutal.
I lose my shit. I mean, just completely break down.
Don't do this, please, God, no. Oh, God, no!
The soundstage was deathly still.
It was the first take, and I felt really good about it. And it's like Neil said, okay, let's do it again. And so you do it again, and automatically you feel like you're manufacturing because you're trying to go back to that place, and you're in that actor nightmare of trying to get back to that reality. And we go through it again in 5th and 6th and 7th take, and I'm just exhausted. I'm crying between takes, and I'm looking at Neil going, this is really, really hard. And finally, after the 8th or 9th take, he said, all right, I think we got it. I was like, oh, thank God. And I went outside, and I was just jacked up for the rest of the day. Just a wreck emotionally. But we got it. Then 2 weeks later, he calls me. And he says, so we need to reshoot a scene. I'm like, cool, what scene are we doing? And he just looks at me. I said, dude, don't do this to me.
And you can either at that moment throw your hands up in the air and say, fuck this, and walk away. Or you can say, okay, this is an opportunity to get it more right.
I'm like, okay, all right. If you don't think you got it, I'm going to show you that you got it. We've got it in the can. And so we go through it again, and it just feels fake, feels artificial. And Neil goes, Go through it again. We start doing it again. And I'm getting madder and madder with each take. And finally, about the fourth take, Neil comes over to me, and I love him so much. He goes, so I'm picking up on some resistance. I was like, you're damn right you're picking up on some resistance. We've got this in the can already, and we're just wasting our time, and we're wasting all this effort and energy. And then he started talking me through the scene. And he was like, what I need you to do is I need you to just strip yourself of all these ideas, and I need you to hit this beat, and this beat, and this beat, and this beat, which just makes it sound so mechanical, and it's such an emotional scene. So we start going through it, and literally I am mindlessly doing these things at this point.
Okay? I know it hurts, baby. I know. So I'm gonna lift you up. I'm gonna lift you up. I'm gonna get you over here. Come on, baby. Come on, work with me, please. God, baby. Sarah. Sarah! Don't do this to me, baby. Don't do this to me, baby. Come on.
And he stops, he goes, now we got it. And I realized that the reason why I wanted that first take to work was because I wanted everyone to look at me and go, wow, what an actor. And that's not what the scene needed.
Those moments where you just have to sort of calm your ego down and just go back and do your work.
That scene actually works, not because of me, but in spite of me. And that really is the marker and definition of working with a truly good director.
There are many like it, but this one is yours. Why don't you have a seat?
Thanks, guys.
It's the director's chair.
Working on the project, we knew we wanted to have a pretty minimalist soundtrack. And we had a folder where we just throw music in there. Looked at the folder one day and we saw, we have a lot of stuff here from Gustavo Santaolalla. We're looking for a composer. What if we reached out to him?
Oh, no. Sarah. Move your hands, baby. I know, baby, I know. Listen to me, I know this one. You're gonna be okay, baby. Stay with me. I want to pick you up. I know, baby. I know it hurts. Come on, baby. Please. I know, baby. I know. Sarah. Baby.
My life has been and still is kind of like a road movie. I grew up in Argentina. I came to the United States in 1978 because we had a horrible political situation in Argentina. We had a military dictatorship where 30,000 people disappeared at the hands of the government and many other more were tortured, and I was blacklisted. It was just impossible for me to keep on living there. I've been in jailed many times since I was probably 15 years old just because I had long hair and I play an electric guitar. So I had to embark on this trip. I can relate to that kind of need of movement and going to the next place and the next place and the next step. I'm always attracted to the possibility of getting involved with a project from the very beginning. I like to work from the script and talking to the director.
It's never been, oh, give me a piece like this or give me a music that's this. It's just been very high level. Here's what the story's about. Here are the themes. Go write some stuff.
Since I don't know how to really read or write music, the way I produce music is actually recording it. So I like to come early in the projects, and I did in The Last of Us. One thing that was fantastic from the very, very beginning was the freedom I had to try and to do whatever I felt could work, you know.
As the story was still being written, you could listen to this piece of music and just get a sense of where this needs to go tonally, because the music was still inspiring the story. So that was the great thing of having the music written so far in advance.
And at the beginning, I was going really out with some things, and sometimes some of those things were the ones that they liked the most, So I really felt very motivated to work, and I enjoyed immensely working.
It was this very organic back and forth experience where one element was inspiring the other and vice versa.
I needed to go into some more dark places, more textural and not necessarily melodic. I'm always trying to sort of push myself into playing instruments that I don't know how to play. There's an element of danger and innocence. Lennon once said, give me a tuba and I will be able to do something. I'm an artist. I should be able to do something. I like to put myself in that situation. So these are just PVC pipes, the one you use, in construction. Or instruments that I know, kind of twist them. From the concept of the prepared piano, I've worked with prepared guitar to stick things into the guitar and things like that. And also in The Last of Us in particular, I work with a detuned guitar. So I really tune the guitar extremely low. And the result is, strings that are very loose and will produce not only sound, but produce noise. Because I believe, every environment has its own sound. We have in our, small studio, we have actually the possibility to record almost anywhere, including the bathroom, and we have done some fabulous recording, especially in the kitchen. When you score to picture, which is something that I don't do, then you know what you're going to expect. But when you provide people with music, like I've done in all the films that I've done, and then you see it, how the director decided to use that, in what particular way he uses it or where they edit it. It's always fascinating to me. I watch a scene and I'm going, it's fantastic how they use this piece. I would have never, of all the music that I've done, probably I would have never used this piece there, but it works great. So I like that feeling of collaboration. I think, the guys also that work in programming and adapting that music to the game, they should share a lot of the credit for the end result.
In the beginning, there was silence. Yes. Then they hired sound designers. Then they regretted that decision.
Hold it steady. Ha! Got you!
In a much quieter environment like that, we really had to fill out the soundscape with much more natural sounds, much more detailed, delicate sounds. The tension comes from the lack of sound, in a way.
Your brain is thrown off because where I expect to hear buses and crowds, all of a sudden I hear wind and leaves rustling. Again, it's creepy and beautiful at the same time because it's almost like I'm going on a hike, but I'm in a downtown area.
Get up over this truck. Let's see what we can find.
To Neil, we were going through the iteration, so he just did not want yells and screeches and what he called kind of witchy qualities, right. The cackling witch. He didn't want anything like that. It was a little bit of a head scratcher to figure out, okay, how do we make it sound human but not human? Yeah. We really did not want to use any animals. We wanted these all to be human. Derek and I basically decided to hire a couple of voice actors who did some interesting work vocally to see if they could come up with something. And we worked with this girl, Misty Lee.
She started giving us these really great screeches.
That's no process.
Yeah, that's just her voice. And it started going into this little click. We also used a little bit of Phil's voice. We combined that also with an occasional, Derek. That's just me, you know, moving my tongue. And what that kind of did was it sort of grounded it all, like maybe in the mouth area, the wetness, all that kind of stuff. And it adds a nice texture, actually. This is a composite of all the bits I just told you about.
Sounds like a Snapple bottle.
Oh, the lid?
Like the lid, yeah.
Hey, that's a good idea. Fuck, where were you guys like months ago? Why didn't we think of that? Why did we think of that? Viewers at home, you're probably wondering what this is. Let me tell you. About 10 years ago, I saw this Synthi A suitcase synth. I wanted to get one. This finally arrived in January, just in time to start using. I thought, well, what can I do with this? In Lakeside, there's a whiteout that happens, and this thing has a noise generator, which gives really convincing wind sound. The military still has technology. There's sirens and alarms, so I wanted to try some new concepts.
Man.
What?
Nothing, it's just... I've never seen anything like this, that's all.
You mean the woods?
Yeah. Never walked through the woods. It's kind of cool.
We consciously take in consideration lighting in the beginning.
Most of the game, we don't really have any real man-made light sources, so everything is naturally lit.
In the past, you know, we could use a lot of artificial light, but in a world that has no electricity,
We have to hide most of the time, and that requires getting very close to certain assets.
Just stay back.
Otherwise, can't.
Detail's expensive, and if you build up too much of it, you end up running into technical problems, right? Your engine slows down.
When the frame rate goes down, everyone can bring up the profiling tools and see which parts of the frame actually cause the drop of the frame rate.
This is the profiling tool. These are all the SPUs. Here's the GPU, and then here's the PPU. You can see, like, here's the main process, and here's all the sub-processes, and you can see, tells you, like, how many milliseconds and cycles it's taking. The programmers are whiz at modifying this stuff and realizing, oh my god, why is this thing so big? We're taking 10 milliseconds on this thing. And then that's when they come over and find somebody and hit them over the head with a club and be like, why are you doing this? I love, we put the 30 frames per second goal because that's what we shoot for. Someone nicely put the 60 frames per second goal. It's like, yeah, we're not going to hit that.
Lighters usually can come up with different lighting setup that still looks great, but is less costly in terms of performance.
Did you talk to the character artist about her hand? So her face is getting a lot of spec, but then her arm is just like bone dry.
You think something we can tweak in shader? We'll have to send back to character team Michael to take a look.
I can play with the lights and see if that's creates more like spec.
Yeah.
I've never ever focused so much on lighting and how much sensitivity there is to that here.
One of the first lighting scenarios I had to do was like 7 a.m. like overcast, and I'd like wake up early and like take photos with my phone. What color are the shadows? What color is the light?
It is a master's course unto itself of how to deal with ambient lighting because I've never had to use it so much.
Man, this is kind of sad.
What is?
All this music that's just sitting here. No one's around to listen to it. I don't know. Doesn't seem right.
All the characters cast soft shadows onto the environment. Even when there is no direct sunlight or no direct light sources, we still have nice fuzzy shadows.
When you're walking down a hallway and you see your soft shadow goes along with you projecting on the wall on the environment, that make everything look real.
Follow me through here.
Okay.
The flashlight brought a whole new spin on it. So some of the environments end up being really, really dark, and you need the flashlight to get around.
Give me a hand.
We want to have the environment be really dark, but also at the same time have colorful surfaces that are sort of hidden, so when a flashlight hits one of those, it bounces off onto the ceiling.
If you shine a light on a red wall, it will bounce the red lighting on the whole environment.
And it's very difficult to do, very expensive, but we did it. Everything should have a bounce lighting. Otherwise, the world is gonna feel dry and unrealistic.
I guess this is where the assholes sleep. I mean, slept.
This engine is really driven in a way towards a very high level of cinematic control over each frame. And hopefully, if we achieve our goal, you'll see it is beautiful. There are these truly beautiful moments amid all this chaos and destruction.
Yeah, once we're done with this whole thing, I'm gonna teach you how to play guitar. What do you say, huh? Ellie, come on.
I got you.
Damn it, Bill.
What just happened?
One of Bill's stupid traps. There, that fridge, it looks like that's a counterweight.
Okay.
The story really dictates sort of the arc of the overall pacing.
Storytelling would always want to be subtle. They would always want to keep the world grounded in reality. But gameplay has requirements where the player needs to see this thing. The player needs to immediately know that the enemy is attacking, that this room is dangerous, that this room is a puzzle that you have to solve.
What are the things that we can do on the joystick to make you feel the same way that these characters are going to feel when we get to this next pinch point in the story? There's a turn in a scene that we need these characters to take, and we need you to feel it or understand that, and that means you have to play it.
Sail! Oh, thank God. Gotta keep running. Doorway, over there.
Run!
We really want to make sure that there's that contrast between the negative space and then the high tension spikes.
A lot of times we won't play music, or we'll play very minimal music just to let you know kind of the state, whether you're still in stealth or combat has broken out. Hearing someone's footsteps or hearing a person breathing on the other side of the door has so much tension to it.
You hear that?
Shh, quiet. You feel the tension of the world, make you question whether you want to engage with these guys or kind of try to stealth around them.
That's another reason why we don't have traditional cover in the game. You smoothly move around everything, contextualizing with the environment, but you're never locked down. We want the player to, with that crafting system, with the scavenging system, with all of the abilities available to them, to constantly be moving around and changing as the moment arises.
Gameplay is all about, I have a limited set of tools, and how am I going to use those tools and those limitations to overcome this obstacle in front of me. And that obstacle might be infected, might be another class of humans that wants to kill me for a bottle of alcohol in my shoes.
It was important for us that we don't underplay the violence, because then the threat doesn't seem as real.
We see video games as this incredible medium to tell stories. We want to treat it as equals to books or comics or TV or movies. This is subject matter that would not be considered out of the ordinary to tell in one of those other forms of entertainment.
Fucking hunters. See, this could have been us.
We wanted you to buy just the desperation of these people and why they're behaving this way, because it's so brutal. And at the same time, we didn't want to make it so over the top, stylizing it, so then it doesn't become as real. It was important for us actually to hit that middle ground where it's kind of disturbing.
That glint that's happening on that curvature, it'd be good if there was a way that we can guarantee that from this angle, we're seeing it.
But really it's flat. Overall too bright and opaque.
Yeah, looks like paint.
Yeah, see, the blood on the ground works really well. It's something about the other shader is messed up in this environment. We got to fix that to unify the look.
Shouldn't make you giggle or laugh or any of that. You should be kind of appalled by what you have to do, but you understand why you're doing it.
You want to feel each hit. You want to feel each concussive strike. Lives are at stake.
You want a death animation to have impactful performance, not just have a guy keel over in a ragdoll.
In real life, a guy hitting a guy takes a half a second, but in the game world, you want that to be as instantaneous as possible.
I live my whole life in this very ugly test level. I basically just fight dudes in here all the time. Almost every move is divided between like an intro and a swing. And one of the many things I have to end up doing is like counting frames and being like, okay, on frame 18, I want you to get out of here. I want you to be able to start moving. Every hit reaction that an NPC plays, they are not necessarily in the correct pose. When you strike them the next time, we just pop them with a 0 frame animation change, which is usually kind of a no-no, you know what I mean? Normally you want characters to blend smoothly and realistically into animations. But what we found is that you can cover that pop up with a heavy impact. They can go from almost any pose into the pose that the impact starts from, and your eye just covers up the transition for you. So if you throw a brick at a guy, it puts him in this like kind of staggering stun state. And that changes the moves that you do when you come up and punch him. So now I'm gonna come up and punch him, and now when you're punching him, because you've hit him down, you get this like auto aim moment where you get like a free headshot. I try to make it so that, you know, if you kind of know what you're doing, that you can set yourself up for 1 + 2 = 3.
Right here!
Memory on a console is a very precious resource. All of Joel's animations with every weapon, all the NPC animations, the stealth kills, you know, all of that stuff happening need to fit within a 4 meg to 5 meg memory footprint.
This is a list of everything that's loaded in game and how much memory it's taking, because memory is our most precious resource right now. So we have a level, we call it the bookstore, it's in Hunter City, and this is a zone, for example. So when I set an AI to this zone, he will never leave its boundaries. I want guys to guard this exit where you have to go through, so I'll zone a couple guys around there to make sure that they, you know, they can fight you and use all this cover, but they want to stay around this door. This is another key component of the AI, is what we call the nav mesh. This defines the overall play space of where an AI knows he can or cannot go. Hey look, that's where a cover used to be, and there's a hole cut out for it. I gotta fix that. Here's some other wonderful things. See these little red polygons? Yeah, that means they're not linking right for some reason, so that means they can't really walk through here properly. It's a bug, and I need to fix it. Welcome to my life.
Hey!
If you look at a lot of games, NPCs are usually only alive for, you know, a few seconds before the player ends up shooting them and then they're dead. We want our guys to be much more dangerous and much more threatening, which means they have to be alive for longer. They need to exist in the world for longer, which means you as the player can witness them acting out their behaviors for longer.
So we've been working really hard on our AI systems. Back of the box, biggest bullet is going to be like AI.
So we tried a number of different prototypes with the buddies, including having Ellie be super independent of you. She would try to flank the enemies, get behind them, or get between you and them.
And a lot of times those decisions should surprise you, just like a real person, a real character would surprise you.
And we discovered after many different prototypes, the best thing for her to do generally is to stay very near you.
You need the exploration, you need the scavenging, you need something to say like, okay, if we just crank it to 11 the whole time, then it's pinned up there and there's no time to breathe, no time to assess or analyze, and no time to really contrast. There's no way of shifting the pacing.
Puzzles are really weird, especially like Naughty Dog puzzles. I think they're very simple and satisfying. Most of this puzzle is strict exploration. You can see the ladder here, you can see the pallet there, you can see a clear route up to the ladder. So you're like, okay, maybe you have to get Ellie to the pallet, push the pallet over to this side, and like Ellie will climb up and lower the ladder. So that whole part is like, that's not a puzzle, that's not regarded as a puzzle, but when you feel like you've got to the solution and you're like, okay, I'm going to climb this ladder, and you climb it, and it breaks off, hopefully then the player will feel a little bit stumped and they'll be like, I'm not really sure what I am meant to do now. And so this is where the puzzle starts. Hopefully at this point, like all of the elements that the player needs to solve the puzzle are very familiar to them because they've been through the previous exploration beats. They're improvising with elements that are at their disposal. That's a really sort of like strong theme throughout like The Last of Us. So, like you're a survivor, you'll take whatever tools you're given and you'll use them in like creative ways to survive.
We set out to create something kind of new to Naughty Dog, this crafting system. Our lead designer, Jacob Minkoff, he got this book of like the survivalist handbook and homemade munitions and all sorts of funny stuff. Just start reading about, okay, if I was just wandering around in a collapsed society, this world, what stuff that seems like I could find? Alcohol and sugar, you know, if you want to make a smoke bomb.
It's difficult to balance the right amount of resources against what you think the player's going to need and making sure that the player feels like they're getting just enough to survive, but not too much that they feel like they're a powerhouse.
We wanted you to be forced to make some choices in the world that showed how depleted the resources were.
So if there's a particular point in the story where the characters are having a particularly difficult time surviving, then we want you as the player to be finding fewer items, farther apart, harder to survive. We will item starve you at the same time that those characters are feeling starved and worn out. Then you expose something to them. Oh, here's a cache, and if I can just get into that cache. Oh, look, there's a wealth of things in here. God, I was so worried. My health was low. If I had run into a combat, because it's always that thing in your head, it's that Hitchcockian thing about the danger that you see is less meaningful than the danger that's in your head.
When we're designing the levels, you know, it's nice to have the stuff that we know people are going to encounter. You know, we kind of call this some of the critical path stuff. These are the things that 9 out of 10 players are going to find. They're right in the way. It's where you have to go. And then whenever designing a level, you want to have that little nook and cranny, right? You want to reward the player being like, oh, you went over here. And then you also want to have that other second nook and cranny.
The player is supposed to go place a ladder here and climb up through the rest of the hotel. But what they can also do is shimmy across this area, and I place a really cool like upgrade kind of off the beaten path to reward players for exploring. So if they come all the way over here, they're gonna get this really cool training manual.
It's a funny little bit of trivia. The HUD system, not the menus, not like when you hit start and stuff, but the actual HUD system where you see the reticles and stuff, was literally created for an E3 demo early in Uncharted 1, and that's been our HUD system, the foundation of our HUD system for the last 4 games. First time in Naughty Dog's history, we hired Alex. She's awesome, and she's got a really good understanding of UI and how it applies to games.
The thing that I hate about any game's UI is when it pulls you out of the game for too long. No one wants to spend time in menus. Nobody loves UI, if we're being honest. Like, weapon slotting has probably gone through more iterations than any other system. The stuff that we finally ended up implementing, you press select, you get into this menu, then you D-pad left and right through the slots, and then D-pad up and down will change the weapon, and then just, you don't have to press X or anything, you just select out of it. When you're still, like Joel is here, that's fine, but then as soon as you get into an actual situation, so I'm gonna go over here and cause some trouble. Okay, so here they come, oh god. All right, so now I'm out of ammo. Now I need to like get back in that menu. I have to like run away from them, get into the menu, get out of it. And it ends up feeling like super clunky. Like again, okay, I'm out of ammo again. Get out of here. I need to take out one of my other long guns. And now Bill's in trouble. Bill's in trouble over here. And I've got to like I'm in a menu now and it's like, oh shit, whoever designed this UI is so bad. Like, what were they thinking? Bill's gonna die. In theory, it worked, but then in practice, it felt a little clunky.
We wanted it to be the absolute minimum amount of button presses. You don't say to yourself, oh, I'm never going to be able to do this in time, so I'm just going to give up. I'll die, I'll restart, let me try again. You want to always make the player feel that there is a way to survive. They can just do this fast enough.
And like what's gonna go in now, if you just left, right, D-pad through this stuff, you swap out your guns, like between long gun and short gun. If you're now on this gun and you were to hold X to pick your gun. So it all happens within the same system that you're using to slot the weapons. The first iteration that I did on that was awful. It just took way too long to get in. It was just a mess. QA was so upset at me like all the time. I'm sure they hate me now because of that system.
I think the way the industry is kind of maturing and changing in general, you're seeing a lot more focus and importance on refinement and polish. So having internal QA really helps. The industry is kind of changing from QA being this like tighten up the graphics on level 3 bro kind of vibe to like really being a more technical, mental investigative job. On the publisher side, it's more reactive towards the code being delivered in a stable, controlled environment. Whereas on the developer side, especially at Naughty Dog, we are going beneath the art and the design. We're given enough weight where we can go up to somebody and be like, look, you have to fix this. Why? Come over, I'll show you. That kind of feedback, I would love to be able to say like, that was us, but it gets so diffused throughout the iteration process that you're just kind of like adding your I guess like genes into the gene pool and then just seeing what happens, you know what I mean? Everyone's working all the time now. But like I tell people, like 7 weeks and then you can have tons of time off, enjoy the sun, you know? But for now, it's like, this is it for everybody.
Crunching is part of making games. I feel it's human nature, right? If I'm gonna have a guest at home that's gonna come for a couple of weeks, I'm probably gonna clean their room just the day before they arrive, right? And I think it's the same thing. It's just like everything comes together at the end.
I personally enjoy Crunch. I think you get this like absolute laser focus because it has to come together.
There's a camaraderie that also comes
There's a camaraderie, totally, yeah.
The vibe is everywhere, you know what I mean? Everyone's kind of like giving it 150% at this point.
We're getting there, right? You start to get these glimmers, and I don't think anyone who doesn't make games realizes how late in the process you get those glimmers.
1 week before we shipped that press demo, we're all like, this kind of sucks. What's going on here? It's like, we need to dig down and find this. And in 1 week, the fun came together.
Like you're shooting at a guy and then somebody flanks you and you hit him and you avoid the other guy who's shooting you and then you flank and go behind cover and you're like, oh, that 5 seconds in that 15-hour game was really, really fun. How do we make that 5 seconds happen thousands more times?
My favorite video game is making video games. It is as challenging and as complex and as interesting.
If we had to try all the things that didn't work, what's hard about Crunch? It's like marching through that swamp of it not working.
I mean, nothing's ever really final because you can always make something better. Always. So we're constantly changing and constantly reiterating and trying to make it better and better and better pretty much until we ship.
As an artist, you're never really happy with your work. You could be given 100 years to work on something, and you'll still find things to nitpick and things to fix.
Yeah, you can work on the game for 10 years and you'll still be crunching at the end. So it's like, okay.
All of a sudden, it's like getting ready one morning in the shower, and I was just like, oh yeah, I'm about to ship another title, and this is going to be a really good title, and it gets you excited, and you're like, all right.
Do I think the game's gonna be good? Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. I think it was good a little while ago, and now we're gonna make it
extra
kind of
good.
amazing.
Yeah.
What it will take to get there in these next 5 weeks is gonna be a lot. I'm excited. I have faith.
Every time we're shipping a game, it's terrifying. You just hope for the best.
You don't know, right? I mean, people have different opinions. We have to go with our guts, and I trust the team just to pull it off.
This, hands down, is the hardest, most challenging thing I've ever done. We sweat a lot, and we worked a lot, and we all went home tired, you know? But I think that's you're gonna see that on the screen. I think that's gonna pay off.
Ellie? Ellie?
What?
The ladder. Come on.
Right.
After David, Ellie's visibly distant. You could have done a cutscene to show, hey, you're being very distant, and she's not responding, but to also do that in gameplay to where it's something that you've done just countless times throughout the game with, let me boost you up here, get the ladder, bring it down so we can do this systemic thing, and the character responds with that, and you have to actually go over to her and go, hey, come on, the ladder, we've done this, let's do this. It's a subtle choice.
Like Bruce and I talked in the beginning, is we have these mechanics, how can we exploit them in a narrative sense? And that's one of those opportunities.
I just think it's incredible that happens in-game. It's not a cinematic, it's something that adds weight to that controller when they're playing.
Wow, so good!
Let's go eat.
Let's go eat.
TLOU.